Hey guys, just want to say thanks for tuning in today. Smash that subscribe button if you're new here, and as always, please like this video if you enjoy the stories. Now, let's get into the stories.
I almost deleted the app that night, not for any dramatic reason. I was just bored of the same faces, the same bios that felt like they were copied and pasted by the same person with different hair. I was laying on my bed scrolling with one hand, phone almost slipping out of my grip, when her profile popped up. Nothing flashy. One blurry mirror pic. No bio except a single line about liking late drives and FaceTime dates. I remember thinking that was weird but also kind of refreshing. I swiped right without thinking. We matched before my screen even dimmed. We didn't talk much before meeting. That should have been my first clue. Just a few short messages spread over a couple days. No long back and forth, no getting to know each other. She suggested meeting up at this late night desert place on the edge of town. One of those spots that stays open way too late and smells like burnt sugar and bleach. She also insisted we FaceTime during the date. Not before. During. She said it helped her feel comfortable. I didn't love it, but I also didn't want to sound weird or controlling, so I said sure. The night of the date, I remember noticing how empty the parking lot was. There were a few cars, but none near mine. The air was cold in that driveway that makes your nose sting. When I walked in, she was already sitting at a corner table, phone propped up against a napkin holder, screen facing her. She looked normal. Tired, maybe. Hoodie, messy hair, chipped black nail polish. Nothing about her screamed danger. She smiled when she saw me and adjusted her phone slightly. I sat down and tried to ignore the fact that her phone camera was angled in a way that felt like it wasn't just pointed at her. She barely looked at me directly. Her eyes kept flicking to the screen, like she was checking comments on a video. I told myself she was just nervous. Some people are awkward on dates. Some people hide behind their phones. After we ordered, she picked up the phone and held it between us. She said she needed better lighting. Again, I didn't question it. I was more focused on how the screen reflected in her eyes. Little flashes of movement, shapes, like more than one person. I assumed it was just her own reflection or maybe lag. As time went on, I started to notice patterns that didn't sit right. Every time I shifted in my seat, her phone adjusted too. When I leaned back, she leaned forward. When I rubbed my hands together to warm them, she smiled in this small, private way that wasn't directed at me. It was like she was reacting to something I couldn't see. My phone buzzed once in my pocket, then again. I ignored it. I was trying to stay present, trying to be normal. The desserts came, but she barely touched hers. She was more interested in keeping the camera steady. I asked her about her job, and she gave vague answers that sounded memorized. I asked where she grew up, and she shrugged. Every answer felt like filler. About 20 minutes in, her phone slipped slightly, just for a second. The screen tilted toward me before she corrected it. That was the moment everything shifted. I didn't see faces, I saw text. A column of comments rolling upward too fast to read individually. Emojis mixed with short sentences. And at the top, a title bar that made my stomach drop. Is he worth kidnapping? It took my brain a second to process it. I told myself it was a joke, dark humor, some private meme group. But then I saw the viewer count. Not huge, but not small either. Enough to matter. Enough to mean something. My hands went cold. She noticed my expression change and angled the phone away again, her smile tight now. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. My mouth felt glued shut. I started noticing more things all at once. How she'd had chosen the seat with a clear view of the exit. How the place was mostly empty now. How every few minutes she would tilt the phone slightly toward the door, like she was showing someone the room. Like she was proving something. My phone buzzed again. I finally pulled it out, trying not to look suspicious. I had a message from an unknown number. No text preview, just a notification that said image received. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. My heart was already pounding hard enough to make my ears ring. She excused herself to the bathroom, phone still in hand. She didn't pause the call. She just stood up and walked away, camera pointing forward like she was giving a tour. I watched her disappear down the hallway and realized I was alone. Alone in a building with cameras, with exits I didn't know well, with people who might already be nearby. I stood up slowly, trying not to draw attention. I left cash on the table, even though I hadn't eaten. I walked toward the door and felt my phone buzz again. This time it was a message preview. Short, confident. It said they were voting. I didn't run. I wanted to. Every part of me was screaming to bolt, but I forced myself to move normally. I pushed through the door, and the cold air hit me like a slap. The parking lot lights hummed overhead. My car was still there. Thank God. But there was a van idling 2 rows over, headlights off. I hadn't noticed it before. My phone buzzed again. Another image. This one loaded on my lock screen without me touching anything. It was me, sitting at the table, taken from behind. Timestamp from a few minutes earlier. My chest tightened. That meant someone else had been inside, watching, closer than I thought. I unlocked my car with shaking hands and got inside. I didn't start it right away. I looked around first. Mirrors, back seat, everything. When I finally turned the key, the engine sounded too loud, like it was announcing me. I pulled out fast, tires crunching on gravel. As I drove, my phone kept buzzing. I didn't look. I couldn't. I focused on the road, on staying in lit areas, on not going straight home. I took random turns, doubled back, watched my mirrors. The van pulled out a minute later. Maybe coincidence, maybe not. It stayed far back, but it followed the same turns, every single one. I drove for almost an hour, through neighborhoods, past closed stores, anywhere with people or cameras. Eventually, the van disappeared. I didn't slow down until I was sure it was gone. I didn't go back to my apartment. I slept in my car in a grocery store parking lot with the doors locked and the seat reclined just enough to breathe. In the morning, the app was gone from my phone. Not deleted, just gone. Like it had never been there. The messages from the unknown number were gone too. My call log was empty. But when I checked my photos, there was one image saved at 3 in the morning. A screenshot of a poll, my face in the background, the final result circled. Worth it. I don't use dating apps anymore. I don't answer unknown numbers. And if anyone ever insists on FaceTime during a date again, I'm leaving before I even sit down. I downloaded the app again on a Sunday night when the city felt extra quiet, like everyone else had somewhere better to be. I was sitting on my bedroom floor with my back against the bed, phone plugged in, scrolling without even really looking. My thumb hurt. My brain felt fried. I told myself I was just killing time, not actually trying to meet anyone. That lie lasted maybe 10 minutes. His profile stopped me in a way most didn't. Not because he was insanely attractive or flashy. It was the opposite. Normal face, soft smile, plain jacket. Bio said he liked city walks, used bookstores, and hated loud bars. It felt weirdly specific, like it was written for someone exactly like me. We matched fast. He messaged first. Nothing clever, just calm and polite. It felt easy. Too easy, but in a way I didn't question because I was tired of everything being hard. We talked for a week, every day. Not nonstop, but consistent. Good mornings, random thoughts, links to articles. He remembered things I said. Small things, like how I hated cilantro and how I always forgot to water my plants. It didn't feel intense. It felt balanced. Safe. When he asked me out, it didn't feel like a risk. It felt like the obvious next step. We met at a small public park near the river, the kind with cracked paths and old benches that never got fixed. It was late afternoon, still light out. Kids on bikes, joggers, dogs everywhere. I liked that he picked somewhere open. He was already there when I arrived, sitting on a bench, phone face down beside him like he wasn't attached to it. That alone felt rare. He was exactly like his pictures. Same calm expression, same clothes. He stood up when he saw me and smiled like he was genuinely happy I showed up. We started walking without any awkward moment where you don't know what to do with your hands. It felt like we'd done it before. The first part of the date was almost boring in the best way. Talking about work, about how weird the city's gotten, about how dating apps feel like a job interview with filters. Nothing deep, nothing alarming. I remember thinking how nice it was to not feel like I was being sold something. We sat by the river after a while. The water was low and brown, moving slow. He asked thoughtful questions, not invasive, just curious. He listened in a way that made me talk more than usual. I noticed he wasn't sharing as much about himself, but I didn't push it. Some people open up slowly. I told myself that was healthy. It was when we got up to leave that things shifted. Not suddenly. More like a crack forming that I couldn't stop noticing once it was there. As we walked, he mentioned how many first dates he'd been on. Not in a bragging way. More like stating a fact. He said it casually, like he'd say how many movies you'd seen this year. I laughed and said something about the apps being exhausting. He nodded and said he knew because he'd been on dates with almost everyone. I thought he meant everyone on the app, or everyone in a certain age range. I didn't correct him. I just waited. He kept going. He said he had been very intentional about it, that he had gone on dates with women from every app, every neighborhood, every background he could reach. Not for fun, not for connection, but to collect data. I remember stopping walking without realizing it. He noticed and stopped too, turning toward me. His face didn't change. No smile, no nervousness, just calm. He explained that he kept notes after every date. Patterns, responses, body language, word choices. He tracked how long people stayed, what questions made them lean in, what topics made them pull back. He said he was writing something important. I asked what he was writing, expecting a book or a project or some weird social study. He said it was a manifesto. The word hung there, heavier than it should have been. I didn't know what to do with it. He didn't say it dramatically. He said it like it was obvious, like I should already know. We kept walking. I didn't want to stand still anymore. Suddenly, the open park felt less open. The kids were gone. The joggers thinned out. The light was starting to fade. He talked more as we walked. Not faster, not louder. Just more. He said modern dating had broken something fundamental. That people were predictable when they thought they were being evaluated. That women especially revealed more than they realized when they felt safe. He said he wasn't judging, just observing. I noticed then that he never used my name. Not once. Not before, not now. I also noticed he never asked me anything personal after that point. It was like I had shifted categories in his head. He told me he rated dates afterward, not on attractiveness, but on usefulness. How much information he could extract. How honest people were without realizing it. He said most people failed early. They repeated scripts. But some, like me, gave him a lot to work with. My stomach tightened. I tried to play it off to laugh, but my body wasn't following the script. My steps felt off. I asked him why he was telling me this. He said because he liked transparency, because I was near the end of his data collection, because it wouldn't matter soon anyway. We reached the edge of the park where the path met a quiet street. My car was parked a block away. His was somewhere else. I felt relief at that. I felt stupid for feeling relief over something so small. He said he had documents, spreadsheets, recordings, not audio, just notes typed immediately after dates while details were fresh. He said he never used names in the writing, but he kept a separate file with matches, photos, workplaces, habits, just in case. He said it made the analysis stronger. I realized then that he had never taken his phone out during the date, not once. I had assumed that meant he was present. Now it felt deliberate, like he didn't need it out because everything was already stored. I slowed my pace and told him I needed to head out. I didn't hear reason. I didn't apologize. I just pointed toward my car. He nodded like he'd expected that moment. He said he hoped I wouldn't ghost him, that he still needed to finalize a few things. He said he might reach out with follow-up questions, but that I wasn't obligated to respond. He said my reactions today were already very useful. Useful. The word stuck to me. I walked away without turning back. I felt his eyes on me the whole time. Not in a threatening way, in a focused way, like I was still part of the process until I was out of sight. I got into my car and locked the doors immediately. My hands were shaking so hard I had trouble starting it. I pulled away fast, checking my mirrors more than I needed to. He didn't follow. That almost made it worse. When I got home, I didn't go inside right away. I sat in the car scrolling through my phone, rereading our messages. Everything looked different now. Every question felt less innocent. Every compliment felt measured. I noticed how often he had asked the same thing in slightly different ways. I checked the app. His profile was gone. Not unmatched. Gone, like it never existed. I didn't sleep much that night. My brain kept replaying moments, trying to figure out how long he had been studying me. How many others were in his files? How many of them had walked away laughing, never knowing what they had contributed to? 2 days later, I got an email from an address I didn't recognize. No subject line, just an attachment. I didn't open it. I deleted it immediately, emptied the trash, blocked the address. But sometimes when I walk past that park, I think about how calm he was, how planned everything felt. And I wonder how many more dates he needed before he felt finished. I almost didn't go because my phone battery was at 12%, and I told myself that was a sign. Not a big dramatic sign, just one of those dumb excuses you use when you're tired of getting ready for strangers. I was already halfway dressed though, and she had picked the place, and it was close to my apartment, so I went. That decision still feels heavier than it should, like a hinge moment I didn't notice until everything swung the wrong way. We matched 2 days earlier. She messaged first, which already put her above most people. Her profile was clean and simple. Smiling photos, no filters, no fake edgy jokes. She mentioned she worked in healthcare, but didn't say where or doing what. I thought that was normal. Lots of people keep work vague. Our messages were steady but not flirty. More practical, like scheduling a meeting instead of a date. I noticed it but didn't care. I was in a low-effort mood. The restaurant was one of those newer places trying really hard to look old. Exposed brick, dim lighting, menus on thick paper. The kind of place that charges $18 for pasta and acts like that's reasonable. I got there first and sat near the back where the lighting was softer. She showed up right on time. No rushing, no apologies. She smiled and sat down like she had already decided this was going well. At first, everything felt fine. She asked normal stuff. Where I grew up, what I did for work, if I had siblings. I noticed she remembered things quickly. Repeated details back to me like she was checking them off. Again, I told myself that was a good thing. Attentive, present. Then the question shifted. Not suddenly, but enough that I noticed the change in my body before my brain caught up. She asked about my health, casually, like how people ask if you work out. I said I was fine. She asked if I had any allergies. I said no. She asked if I'd ever had surgery. I joked about wisdom teeth and she nodded like that counted for something. The server came and took our order. She barely looked at the menu. Ordered something simple. No substitutions. No questions. I remember thinking she seemed very controlled, like she had already planned this part. Once the server left, she leaned back slightly and asked about my blood type, not in a curious way, more like confirming something. I laughed because I thought it was a joke. She didn't laugh back. She just watched me. I told her I didn't know, which was true. She nodded again and asked if either of my parents knew theirs. I shrugged. I felt stupid suddenly, like I was failing a test I didn't study for. She asked about chronic pain, if I ever had it, where, how bad, how often. She asked if I'd ever broken a bone, how long it took to heal, if I scar easily. I tried to keep my tone light, but my chest felt tight. My fork sat untouched on the table. I asked her why she needed to know all this. Not aggressively, just confused. She said she'd like to be informed, that health compatibility mattered to her. I didn't fully buy it, but I didn't want to seem dramatic. I told myself some people are just intense. She asked about pain tolerance next, how I handle it, if I panic or stay calm, if I pass out, if I've ever been under anesthesia, if I wake up disoriented. I noticed she was watching my hands as she asked. I had started fidgeting without realizing it. The food came. I took a bite just to have something to do. I barely tasted it. She didn't eat it all, just pushed things around her plate while keeping eye contact. She asked if I was an organ donor. I said yes automatically because I am, and then immediately wished I hadn't answered so fast. She smiled at that. Not a big smile, a small one like she had expected it. I went to the bathroom halfway through because I needed space. The mirror made me look pale. I splashed water on my face and told myself to relax. I told myself this was just a weird date and weird dates happen. I checked my phone. No messages. No missed calls. Everything normal. When I came back, there was another woman at the table. She was standing beside my date, not sitting, wearing scrubs under a jacket. hair pulled back tight. She looked tired in that specific way that comes from long shifts. She wasn't holding a menu. She wasn't holding a bag. She was just standing there like she belonged. My date didn't look surprised to see her. If anything, she looked relieved. The server came back too, carrying water. He paused for half a second like he sensed something off, then kept going. The woman in scrubs glanced at me, then at my date, then down at the table. Her eyes lingered on my untouched plate. My date gestured for her to sit. She didn't. She leaned in slightly instead, close enough that I could smell antiseptic. That smell alone made my stomach drop. The woman in scrubs pulled out her phone and started scrolling. Not fast. Slow. Deliberate. She nodded once. My date asked me a few more questions, ones that felt heavier now, about family medical history, heart issues, blood pressure, mental health. If I ever fainted, if I had insurance. That one hit me weird. I asked why that mattered. She said it was important to know what kind of follow-up care was possible. Follow-up care. The woman in scrubs finally spoke to my date quietly while looking at me. I couldn't hear the words, but I saw my date's expression change. Not panic. Adjustment. Like recalculating. The scrubs woman shook her head slightly. Then she looked at me and nodded once, like a polite goodbye. She straightened up and left without another glance. The silence after was worse than if she had stayed. My date watched the door close and then turned back to me. She finally picked up her fork and took a bite. She seemed relaxed now, like something had resolved. I asked her who that was. She said a colleague. She said she had asked her to stop by because she was nearby. She said it was nothing to worry about. I didn't believe her, but I didn't argue. My brain was already focused on leaving. On getting out without making a scene. She noticed my posture change. She asked if I was uncomfortable. I nodded. She looked genuinely disappointed, like I had ruined her night. She told me I had good markers, that most people lied about their health, that I hadn't. She said honesty mattered. She said she liked that about me. I stood up. My legs felt unsteady. I said I needed to go. I reached for my wallet, and she told me not to worry about the bill. She had already paid. That alone made me want to run. I walked out without looking back. The night air felt sharp, grounding. I walked past my car at first just to keep moving. I didn't want to sit still yet. When I finally drove home, I took a different route, then another. Just in case, I checked my mirrors too often. At home, I locked the door and leaned against it longer than necessary. My phone buzzed a few minutes later. A notification from the app. Her profile had updated, new photo, same smile. I unmatched her immediately, blocked her, deleted the app. 2 weeks later, I got a letter in the mail. No return address. Inside was a single page, a printed checklist. Most of the boxes were filled in. My name was handwritten at the top. One box near the bottom was circled in pen. Not suitable. I don't go to that restaurant anymore. I don't answer health questions on dates. And every time I smell antiseptic, my stomach tightens like my body remembers before my head does.
Hey guys, really sorry to disturb you, but if you're enjoying the stories up until this point, please smash that like button. That's all I'm asking for you guys. Let's break some records this year. Now back to the stories.
I didn't notice the pattern at first because I didn't want to. That's the honest part. When you finally match with someone who doesn't feel like a chore, you stop double checking the little things. You let stuff slide. You tell yourself you're being chill instead of careful. That's what I was doing. Being chill. Ignoring the part of my brain that kept whispering that nothing good ever starts after midnight. His profile showed up on a Tuesday night when I couldn't sleep. One of the scrolling sessions where your eyes go dry and every face blurs together. Then his didn't. It wasn't even a great photo. Just him leaning against a brick wall, streetlight glow, half smile. But it felt real, like he hadn't overthought it. His bio was short, like night walks, bad coffee, and quiet places. I swiped right without pausing. He matched almost instantly. We talked every night. Not all day, not random check-ins. Just after the sun went down. It felt intentional, like we were stepping into the same headspace on purpose. He was funny without trying. Asked questions that actually connected to what I said. Remembered details. When I mentioned my job, he didn't fake interest. He asked follow-ups that made sense. When I joked about hating mornings, he didn't tell me to change. He said nights were better anyway. When he asked me out, he suggested meeting late. Not sketchy late, just after 10. He said crowds made him tired. I agreed because they did the same to me. We met at a small overlook above the city, the kind of place locals go when they don't want to be seen. He was already there, leaning on the railing, hands in his pockets. Exactly like his pictures. Same face, same posture, same calm presence. The first date felt easy. We walked, talked, sat in the hood of my car. The city lights flickered below us. He never tried to push things. Never made me feel rushed. When it got cold, he offered his jacket and didn't make it a thing. When I said I should head home, he nodded and didn't ask to come with me. It felt respectful. Rare. The second date was 2 nights later. Again late, again somewhere quiet. An all-night diner on the edge of town with buzzing lights and cracked vinyl booths. He knew the server by name but didn't linger on it. He ordered the same thing he always did. Told me routines helped him think. I didn't question it. The conversation went deeper but not heavier. Family stuff. Childhood stuff. He avoided certain topics smoothly, like stepping around puddles without making it obvious. The third date was the one that locked it in for me. We didn't even go anywhere special. Just walked through a closed park, hopped a fence that everyone hops, sat on cold metal swings. It felt stupid and fun, like being 16 again without the bad parts. I remember thinking I could see this becoming something. Not dramatic, just Teddy. After that night, I went home smiling like an idiot. I plugged my phone in, kicked off my shoes, and opened the app to read our messages like I always did. Except when I searched his name, nothing came up. I figured he unmatched me by accident. It happens. I refreshed, closed the app, reopened it. Still nothing. I tried not to spiral. I told myself apps glitch all the time. Then I saw his face again. It was his profile. Same name, same bio. But the photos were wrong. The first picture stopped me cold. It was his face, but not his body. The jawline was his. The eyes were his. But everything else was off. The shoulders were broader. The posture different. Like someone had studied him and tried to recreate him from memory. The lighting was wrong too. Harsh. Indoor. The smile was copied but didn't sit right, like it had been practiced in a mirror. I scrolled. Every photo was like that. Him, but not him. Same face stretched across different frames. Different settings. Different hands. In one picture, the fingers were longer. In another, the neck was thicker. It felt like looking at a costume that didn't quite fit. I checked the distance, 0 miles. My chest tightened. I told myself maybe he updated his pics. Maybe he borrowed old photos. Maybe it was being dramatic, but the timestamps were recent. Uploaded within the hour. I refreshed the page again. One of the photos changed. Same face, new body. I locked my phone and set it face down like that would stop it. My heart was pounding. I stood up and checked my apartment, even though I knew that was pointless. Door locked. Windows shut. Everything normal. I unlocked my phone again. The profile was still there. I noticed something new. The bio had one extra line added at the bottom. Something about liking first dates and clean starts. It wasn't there before. I felt sick. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw his face slightly wrong, like a bad filter that kept slipping. The next evening, I got a notification. A message from him. Same name, same profile. He asked if I was free tonight. Nothing else. I didn't answer. I just stared at the screen. Then I did something I shouldn't have. I checked the profile again. The main photo was new. It was taken at the overlook. Our overlook. Same railing. Same city lights. The body in the photo was slimmer than his had been. The jacket was different. But the face was his. Perfect. Smiling the way he smiled at me the first night. I realized then that the photos weren't random. They were sequential. Someone was wearing him forward. I blocked the profile. My hands were shaking so bad I almost dropped my phone. I deleted the app entirely. Not just logged out. Deleted. The next night, around 11, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. No words, just a photo. It was me. Not my face. My body, walking to my car after work, taken from behind, time-stamped from an hour earlier. I sat on my couch in the dark, foam glowing in my hands, trying to breathe. Another message came through. Another photo. This one was of a guy standing under a streetlight. Wrong shoulders. Wrong stance. Familiar face. My face. I threw my phone across the room. It hit the wall and cracked, but didn't stop buzzing. I didn't stay in my apartment that night. I grabbed a bag and drove to my sister's place without telling her why. I slept on her couch with the lights on. Over the next week, I saw his face everywhere. Not in person. Online, fake profiles, different apps, same face on different bodies. Always active at night, always nearby, always recently updated. Then they stopped. No more notifications, no more messages, no more sightings. I tried to move on, told myself it was some elaborate catfish thing, some messed up prank, but sometimes when I catch my reflection in a dark window, I check twice. Because for half a second, the smile doesn't feel like mine. I didn't think anything bad was going to happen because nothing ever does when the night starts out that normal. That's the part people don't like to admit. Scary stuff doesn't show up with warning music or a bad vibe right away. It usually shows up when you're tired, a little lonely, and not trying that hard to be careful. I matched with her on a Thursday night when I was half watching videos and half scrolling, not really invested in either. Her profile felt thrown together. Low effort pics, messy room in the background, a crooked smile that looked real instead of practiced. Her bio just said she hated small talk and liked late nights. That alone felt honest. We matched, traded a few messages, and within an hour she suggested coming over. No build-up, no flirting marathon, just straight to it. I hesitated for maybe 10 seconds. Then I sent my address. She showed up close to midnight. Hoodie, sneakers, hair still damp like she'd showered right before leaving. She didn't look nervous. She didn't look excited either. More like this was just another stop in her night. That should bothered me more than it did. We didn't talk much. Not in a bad way. It just felt unnecessary. She looked around my apartment like she was memorizing it, not judging it. Sat on the couch, kicked off her shoes, leaned back like she'd been there before. I remember noticing how calm she was. Too calm for someone in a stranger's place. The night blurred the way those nights usually do. Nothing dramatic. Nothing worth getting into detail about. Eventually, we both fell asleep. That part felt normal too. When I woke up, the sun was already up and she was gone. No note, no text, nothing missing either. I checked my phone and saw she had unmatched me. Again, not shocking. That happens. People dip, people ghost. I shrugged it off and went to make coffee. That's when I noticed the US drive on my kitchen counter. It was small, black, no branding, just sitting there like it belonged. I didn't own any US drives like that. I barely used them at all. For a second I thought maybe it was mine and I'd forgotten. Then I picked it up and saw the writing. If you're watching this, it's too late, all lowercase, written in silver marker, messy but deliberate. I stood there staring at it longer than I want to admit. My first thought was that it was a joke. Some weird sense of humor thing. Maybe a prank. Maybe she thought it was funny. I didn't plug it in right away. I paced my apartment with it in my hand like it might buzz or get hot. I checked my door. Locked. Windows. Closed. Everything was fine. I told myself I'd throw it away. I'd even walked toward the trash can. Then I stopped. Curiosity beat common sense way too easily. It always does. I plugged it into my laptop. No pop-ups. No autoplay. Just a single folder on the drive. No name. Inside was one video file. I stared at the file name for a full minute before opening it. My heart was already going. My mouth felt dry. I still clicked it. The video started with static. Not loud. Just enough to be uncomfortable. Then it cut to a shot of my bedroom. My bedroom. The camera angle was wrong. Too high. Like it had been set up on top of my bookshelf. I don't own a camera like that. I don't want any cameras at all. The bed was empty in the video, sunlight creeping through the blinds. Then I walked into frame. Me, wearing the same shirt I had on that morning, yawning, scratching my neck, completely unaware. I slammed my laptop shut so hard it almost snapped. I didn't unplug the USB right away. I just sat there breathing like I'd run upstairs. My brain was trying to explain it away. Maybe it was edited. Maybe it was staged. Maybe it wasn't real. But it was my apartment, my stuff, my body. I opened the laptop again. The video was still there. Paused right where I closed it. I hit play. The footage continued, me making coffee, opening cabinets, checking my phone. Every movement matched what I remembered doing that morning. The timestamps in the corner confirmed it. Live recorded, not old. The camera angle never changed. The video went on for 20 minutes. Nothing dramatic. Just me existing. Then the screen went black. Text appeared. You never notice what's already watching you. My stomach dropped so hard I thought I might throw up. I yanked the USB out and immediately felt stupid for touching it at all. I checked my laptop for anything else. No new files. No weird activity, just that one video. I searched my apartment. Every corner, behind furniture, inside closets. I stood on a chair and checked the top of the bookshelf. Nothing. I tried to convince myself that the camera had been temporary, hidden and removed while I slept. That explanation somehow felt worse. My phone buzzed while I was still standing there. Unknown number. No name. No preview. I didn't open it. Another buzz. Same number. Another message. I finally opened it. A photo loaded. It was me, from the video, standing in my kitchen, time-stamped from minutes earlier. I dropped my phone. I didn't pack. I didn't think. I grabbed my keys, my wallet, my laptop, and left. I drove to a friend's place across town without texting ahead. When he opened the door and saw my face, he didn't ask questions. He just let me in. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on his couch refreshing my phone, half expecting another message. Nothing came. The next morning, I went back to my apartment with him. Daylight made it feel safer. Normal, like nothing bad could possibly have happened there. Everything was exactly how I left it. No camera. No signs. No USB. I checked my laptop. The video file was gone. The drive wasn't recognized anymore, like it had never existed. I reported the dating profile. The app said it couldn't find the account. I changed my locks, covered my laptop camera, unplugged anything that could record. I slept with the lights on for a week. A few days later, I got an email. No sender name, no subject, just a video attachment. I didn't open it. I deleted it. I changed my email. Sometimes I still think about that busp, about the wording. Not a warning, not a threat, just a statement, like a fact I was supposed to accept. And sometimes, late at night, when my apartment is quiet, I feel like I'm already being watched again. Not by her, by whatever she introduced. I should have trusted the weird feeling I got before I even left my apartment. Not fear exactly. More like the kind of hesitation you get when you reread a message and realize it sounds different the second time. His last text said he wanted to bring his roommate along because they were a package deal. I laughed when I read it, assumed he meant a friend tagging along for the first 10 minutes, or something awkward but harmless. I told myself I was being open-minded. That thought alone already feels embarrassing now. We matched a few days earlier. His profile was bright in a way that felt forced. Too many smiling photos. All selfies, all indoors. His bio talked about loyalty and honesty and how he hated fake people. It felt intense, but I was bored and he was consistent, so I kept replying. He messaged a lot, like he had nothing else to do. When I took too long to answer, he would double text, but pretend it was accidental. I noticed it, but I brushed it off. He suggested meeting at night because he worked late. A diner off the highway that never closed. That felt safe enough. Public, bright lights, constant noise. When he mentioned bringing his roommate, I hesitated, but he framed it like it was temporary. like the roommate didn't like being alone. That should have been my exit. Instead, I agreed. I got there first. The diner smelled like grease and old coffee. I picked a booth near the window so I could see the parking lot. I kept checking my phone. Part of me hoped he would cancel. He didn't. His car pulled in slow. Too slow, like he was being careful not to spill something. He parked crooked, took a second, then got out and walked around to the back seat. That's when I saw it. At first, my brain refused to label it. It was tall, human-shaped, dressed in a hoodie. He opened the back door and leaned in, adjusting something. Then he lifted it out. It was a doll. Not a small one. Not a joke prop. A full-size doll. Stiff limbs. Plastic skin that caught the parking lot lights in a way real skin never does. Its hair was long and brushed too neatly. Its eyes were open. He carried it like it weighed nothing, like he had done it 100 times. I stayed frozen in the booth, hoping I was misunderstanding. Hoping maybe it was some weird art project. Maybe a mannequin. Anything but what my gut was already screaming. He opened the diner door first, then maneuvered the doll inside, careful not to bump the frame. People stared. No one said anything. The server behind the counter paused mid-step. He spotted me and smiled, relieved like he was glad I was still there. He walked over and slid into the booth across from me, then carefully placed the doll beside him, propped up against the seat. Up close, it was worse. The face was detailed. Too detailed. Painted lashes. Glossy lips. Tiny imperfections added on purpose. The eyes were glassy and slightly off-center, like they had been set by hand. It was wearing a dress and shoes. Someone had put thought into the outfit. He introduced it to me with the same tone you would use for a real person. He adjusted its hair, turned its face toward me so it looked like it was paying attention. My mouth felt dry. I couldn't figure out what expression to make. Laughing felt wrong. Being serious felt dangerous. He started talking like everything was normal. Asked how my day was. Asked if traffic was bad. Every few sentences, he glanced at the doll and nodded like it was reacting. Like it was part of the conversation. The server came over. Her eyes flicked to the doll, then back to him, then to me. She didn't comment. Just took the order. He ordered for all three of us. That's when it hit me that he wasn't joking. Not even a little. As the food came, he shifted his attention more and more toward the doll. He would explain things to it that it had no way of understanding. He laughed at moments that didn't make sense until he looked at it and smiled wider like it had said something funny. I tried to steer the conversation back to us. To ask him about work, about his hobbies, about literally anything grounding. He answered, but briefly, like he was distracted. His eyes kept drifting back to the doll. He asked it questions and waited a beat before responding for it. Not out loud, just with nods and facial expressions. I felt invisible. People at other tables stared openly now. One guy took out his phone and pretended to check messages while clearly recording. I wanted to sink into the seat. He noticed the stares and frowned. He adjusted the doll again, pulling it closer to him, protective. His mood shifted. He started talking about how people don't understand real connection, how everyone leaves, how loyalty is rare. He said some people only stay because they feel obligated, not because they want to. He looked at me when he said that. I nodded along, too afraid to disagree. My hands were shaking under the table. I kept thinking about how I could leave without making him angry. I told myself to just finish the food and go. Then he did something that made my stomach turn. He reached over and wiped the doll's mouth with a napkin, slow, gentle, like it had just eaten. There was nothing there. He whispered something to it and smiled. His eyes were soft in a way they hadn't been with me all night. I realized then that I wasn't on a date with him. I was intruding on whatever this was, and I didn't think he liked that. I made an excuse about needing to use the bathroom and stood up. My legs felt weak. He looked surprised but didn't stop me. He leaned over and adjusted the doll again, whispering something to it while I walked away. In the bathroom, I locked myself in a stall and tried to breathe. My phone buzzed. A message from him already. I didn't open it. I didn't want to see what it said. I considered just leaving, running out the back door, but the idea of him noticing and following me made my chest tighten. When I came back, he was alone at the booth. For half a second, relief washed over me. Then I realized the doll was sitting in my seat, upright, facing him, like it had been moved intentionally. He had shifted over to where I had been sitting before, leaving my spot empty, reserved. He looked up at me and smiled like he had fixed a problem. I didn't sit down. I told him I had to leave. I didn't apologize. I didn't explain. I just grabbed my bag and stepped back. His expression changed. Not anger. Disappointment. Like I had failed the test. He glanced at the doll, then back at me. His shoulders dropped. He said something to it under his breath. His face softened again. Then he looked back at me calm. He told me he understood. That not everyone was ready. That some people couldn't handle real commitment. I walked out. I didn't look back until I was in my car with the doors locked. Through the window, I saw him carrying the doll back outside, holding it close, his head tilted toward it like he was listening. I drove home shaking. When I got to my apartment, I checked every lock twice. I blocked him on the app. Then I deleted it. The next morning, I woke up to a notification for a different app I barely used. A new match. Same name, same smile. His first photo was different, though. It showed him sitting in a booth, arm around someone. The lighting was dim, but I recognized the diner instantly. Next to him was the doll. But the doll was wearing my jacket. The one I left on the back of the chair. I unmatched immediately. My hands were numb. I threw the jacket away later that day without touching it again. Sometimes I think about how carefully he handled it, how much attention he gave it, how easily he replaced me with something that couldn't leave. I don't go on night dates anymore, and if anyone ever says they come as a package deal again, I'm done before it even starts. I realized something was wrong before we even met, but it didn't register as danger yet. It felt more like deja vu that wouldn't settle. The kind that makes you pause and look around even though nothing has actually happened. I remember sitting on my bed, tying my shoes and thinking I had already done this exact thing, like I was replaying a moment instead of living it for the first time. We matched on a Friday afternoon. Her profile was soft. Not boring, not loud, just calm. A couple photos outdoors, one blurry selfie, nothing polished. Her bio mentioned liking old neighborhoods and quiet music. Nothing about it screamed mystery. We talked for 2 days. Nothing intense. No trauma dumping. No oversharing. She asked normal questions and answered mine without dodging. I felt relaxed talking to her, which almost never happens. When she suggested meeting, she picked a place that surprised me. A small park near an elementary school that shut down years ago. The playground equipment was still there, rusted and half fenced off. I hadn't been there since I was a kid. I didn't mention that to her. I just said sure. I got there early. The sun was low but not gone yet. The swings creaked in the wind. It smelled like cut grass and dust. I sat on a bench and scrolled my phone, trying to ignore the weird tight feeling in my chest. She showed up right on time. No hesitation. She smiled like she was seeing someone she already knew. That should have been my first real warning. We started walking along the cracked path that looped the park. At first, everything felt normal. She asked about my job, my commute, the usual stuff. Then she mentioned how she liked places with history, how she liked imagining what people used to be like before they grew up. She asked where I grew up. I told her the name of the city. She nodded like she expected it. Then she asked which neighborhood. I hesitated. Most people don't care that much. I told her anyway. She smiled again and said she liked that area, said it had character. We walked past the old playground. I glanced at it without thinking. She noticed. She asked if I used to come there. I froze for half a second. I hadn't said anything. I told her, yeah, a long time ago. She nodded again, that same calm nod. She said she could picture me there, smaller, quiet, watching instead of playing. My stomach tightened. That wasn't a lucky guess. That was specific. I laughed it off, said I wasn't that quiet as a kid. She didn't argue. She just said I learned how to disappear early. That hit something deep, something I never talk about. We sat on a bench near the edge of the park where the trees grew thicker. The light filtered through in stripes. She crossed her legs and turned toward me fully, like she was settling in. She asked about my parents. Not the usual question. She asked which one left first. I didn't answer right away. My brain stalled. I asked how she knew one of them left. She said most people ICME had that in common. I felt exposed in a way that didn't make sense yet. I told her my dad left when I was young. That was the short version, the safe version. She nodded and said it was before I was 10. She said it happened in the winter. She said I stopped bringing friends over after that. My heart started pounding. Those were things you could find online. I didn't post about that. I barely remembered some of it myself. I asked her where she was getting this from. My voice sounded steady, but my hands were sweating. She said she paid attention. She said people leave trails even when they think they don't. We stood up and kept walking. I didn't want to sit still anymore. I told myself she was bluffing, that she was throwing out guesses until something landed, but she didn't miss. She mentioned my old house, described the color, described the tree in the front yard that never grew right, described the crack in the driveway that I used to trace with my shoe when I waited for the bus. I stopped walking. I asked her to stop. She did, immediately. No pushback, no confusion. She looked at me with something like concern, like she had gone too far too fast. She said she didn't mean to scare me. She said she just thought it was nice to feel seen. That word made my skin crawl. I asked her how she knew about the bus, about the driveway, about the way I waited. She said she had been there. I laughed because the alternative was worse. I said that was impossible. She tilted her head and said not at the same time as me. Not exactly. She said she knew the house after. She knew the family that moved in. She knew what they found in the garage. My throat went dry. Nobody knew about that. Nobody ever found out. I was a kid. I didn't understand what it meant back then, just that it felt wrong and I wasn't supposed to talk about it. I asked her what they found. She told me, not in detail, just enough. I felt dizzy. The park felt too open and too small at the same time. I looked around. No one was paying attention to us. Cars passed on the road beyond the trees. Normal sounds. Normal world. She said she didn't judge me for it. She said kids cope the way they can. She said I had done my best with what I had. I'd never told anyone about that. Not friends. Not family. Not even myself most days. I buried it so deep I almost believed it didn't happen. I backed away from her. I asked her who she was. She said she was someone who paid attention to patterns. She said some lives overlap in strange ways. She said she recognized mine because she had studied a lot of similar ones. I asked if she followed me. She said not exactly. She said she found me later. She said I had a digital shadow bigger than I realized. She said people like me often do. I felt sick. She told me things next that broke whatever barrier I had left. She mentioned a nickname my mom used once and never again. She mentioned a scar on my knee I got when I was 6 and lied about. She mentioned a night I spent hiding in a closet while my parents fought, counting breaths to stay quiet. My ears rang. I couldn't tell if she was still talking or if my brain was filling in gaps. I told her I was leaving. She nodded again, always nodding, like she was allowing me to reach a conclusion she already knew. She said she hoped I would be careful. She said not everyone who notices things has good intentions. That was the last thing she said before turning and walking away in the opposite direction. Not rushed, not dramatic, just gone. I stood there for a long time. My legs wouldn't move. The park looked different now, smaller, familiar in the worst way. I drove home without music. I kept checking my mirrors. Not because I thought she was following me, but because I felt like something else was finally looking back. When I got home, I locked the door and sat on the floor. I'd opened the app. Her profile was still there. But the photos had changed. They weren't of her anymore. They were of places. My old street, the park, the bus stop, the front of my elementary school. Angles that felt personal. Recent. The bio was empty. I blocked the profile, deleted the app, powered my phone off. The next morning, I found a message request on a different platform. No profile picture, just text. It referenced something from my childhood I didn't even remember until I read it. I didn't reply. I changed my accounts, my settings, my routines. But some nights when I lie awake, memories surface that don't feel like mine anymore. Like someone else already knows them better. Like they were never fully mine to keep. I knew something was off before I even saw his face, but I couldn't pin it to anything solid. It was that kind of wrong that sits just behind your eyes, like you forgot something important but can't remember what it was. I had matched with him earlier that week, and everything about him felt smooth in a way that made it easy to stop paying attention. Good photos, normal job, decent sense of humor. Nothing flashy, nothing alarming. Which is probably why I didn't listen to my gut when it started tapping me on the shoulder. We met on a weeknight because he said weekends were complicated. I didn't question it. Lots of people work weird schedules. He picked the place, a casual spot downtown with outdoor seating and string lights that made everything look softer than it really was. It was early evening, still warm out, still busy enough that I felt safe. He was already there when I arrived, sitting stiffly in his chair like he'd been waiting too long. He stood up fast when he saw me, almost knocking his drink over. He apologized too much for small things, the chair, the noise, the traffic. I brushed it off his nerves. We sat down and started talking. He was charming in that practiced way that doesn't feel fake at first. He asked questions, listened, laughed at the right moments, but every few minutes his eyes dropped to his phone. Not casually, sharply, like he was checking the time during an exam. I noticed his leg bouncing under the table, fast, constant. The table vibrated slightly every time it hit a rhythm. He tried to stop it when he noticed me noticing, but it always started again. I asked him if he was okay. He said he was just stressed from work, said he had a deadline, said it would calm down soon. It didn't. The server came by and he jumped like he'd been tapped on the shoulder from behind. He smiled too wide afterward. Overcorrected. I started feeling tired even though the date had barely started. Every time his phone buzzed, his whole body reacted. Not excitement, not curiosity. Fear. His shoulders tightened, his jaw locked. He checked the screen without unlocking it, then let out a slow breath like he'd been holding it underwater. Halfway through, I noticed something else. A faint vibration sound. Not a phone buzz. Lower, duller, coming from under the table. At first, I thought it was traffic, then I thought it was my imagination. But it happened again. Short, controlled, like a warning. He noticed me pause. His eyes flicked down again, this time at his phone. His ankle. He shifted in his seat, crossing one leg over the other in a way that felt deliberate, like he was hiding something. My stomach dropped. I didn't want to jump to conclusions. I told myself there were a dozen explanations. Medical device, fitness tracker, anything normal. But the way he guarded that leg didn't match normal. The vibration came again, longer this time. His face drained of color. He checked his phone again, this time unlocking it. Whatever he read made him square under his breath. He caught himself and looked up at me, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. He said he needed a minute, said he had to step away. I watched him stand up. That's when I saw it clearly. A thick black band around his ankle. Not sleek, not subtle. Bulky, industrial. The kind you can't pretend is anything else once you see it. He noticed me staring and froze. For a second, neither of us moved. The noise of the street filled the gap. Laughter, car horns, silverware clinking. He slowly sat back down. He didn't try to hide it anymore. He looked tired suddenly. Not nervous, resigned. He told me the truth in pieces, like pulling off bandages one by one. Said he was on parole. Said the monitor tracked his location and sent alerts if he stayed somewhere too long or went somewhere he was approved to be. Said his officer checked in randomly. Said tonight had gone longer than he planned. He kept glancing at the device like it might start screaming. I asked why he hadn't told me. He said he wanted one normal night, just one where he wasn't reduced to his worst mistake. I asked what he did. He hesitated too long. That silence felt louder than any answer. The monitor vibrated again, longer, angrier. His phone buzzed at the same time. He looked at the screen and went pale. He said he had to leave. Right now, said if he didn't start moving toward his approved zone, someone would come looking. I asked if he was allowed to be here at all. He didn't answer. He stood up fast, nearly knocking his chair over again. People stared. He didn't care. He grabbed his jacket and looked at me like he wanted to say something else. Something reassuring. Something that would make this less terrifying. Instead, he said he was sorry. Then he limped away, favoring the leg with the monitor. I sat there alone, heart racing, trying to process what had just happened. The server came back and asked if everything was okay. I nodded automatically, paid the bill, left. I walked to my car with my keys threaded between my fingers like I'd been taught, even though I didn't know who I was afraid of anymore. On the drive home, my phone buzzed. A message from him. It was short, apologetic, said he understood if I blocked him, said he hoped I got home safe. I didn't respond. I told myself that would be the end of it. Weird date, scary moment. Lesson learned. Move on. But it didn't end there. The next morning, I woke up to a knock on my door. Not pounding, controlled, official. I peeked through the window and saw a man standing in the hallway with a badge clipped to his belt, clipboard in hand, calm posture, eyes already scanning. My stomach dropped. I didn't open the door right away. I asked who he was through the door. He said he was a parole officer, said he was following up on a location alert from the night before, said my address had been flagged as a possible contact point. My address. I opened the door slowly. He asked if I knew the man, asked how long we had been together, asked what time he left, asked if he seemed agitated or confused. I answered everything honestly. I didn't know what else to do. He took notes, nodded, thanked me for my time, said he might be in touch again. Then he left like it was nothing. I locked the door and slid down against it, shaking. I checked the app. His profile was gone. Not unmatched, gone. 2 days later, I got another message. Unknown number. Just a heads up that he had violated his conditions and was being taken back in. Said he was sorry I got caught up in it. Said he never meant for me to be involved. I blocked the number. Weeks passed. Things settled. My heart rate stopped spiking every time my phone buzzed. Then one night, scrolling out of habit, I saw a familiar face. New profile, different name, same smile. In one of the photos, if you looked close enough, you could see the edge of a black band peeking out under his jeans. I deleted the app again. Sometimes I still think about how nervous he was, how close he was to getting caught, how easily I could have been the reason he disappeared. And sometimes I wonder how many dates he went on just to feel normal for a couple hours before the buzz reminded him who was really in control. The worst dates don't start bad. They start comfortable, almost boring, like nothing memorable is going to happen at all. That's how this one began. I remember thinking halfway through getting ready that I probably wouldn't even tell anyone about it later. Just another night, another person, another polite goodbye. If I had known what she was about to ask me to become, I would have stayed home and let my phone die. We matched on a Monday night. Her profile didn't jump out at me, which is why I trusted it. No heavy filters, no dramatic captions. Just normal pictures in normal places. Her smile looked tired but real. Her bio said she liked quiet bars and hated games. That line felt aimed directly at me. We talked for a few days, nothing intense, just easy back and forth. She joked about how exhausting dating was. I agreed. It felt like we were already on the same page. She suggested meeting at a small lounge near the edge of downtown. Not a party spot, not fancy. Just dim lights, sticky tables, and music low enough to talk over. I got there first and took a seat in the back corner where it felt less exposed. I watched people come and go, couples leaning into each other, friends laughing too loud. Everything normal. She walked in right on time. She looked just like her photos. Maybe a little more tense. She smiled when she saw me, but it didn't fully land. Like she was holding something back. I stood up, we hugged briefly, and sat down. The first drink helped. She relaxed a bit. Told me about her job, her commute, how she hated her apartment because it reminded her of someone. She didn't say who. I didn't ask. I figured it would come up eventually. About 20 minutes in, she asked me if I'd ever done role-playing before. I laughed, assuming she meant something light, like pretending to be strangers or making up dumb backstories. I said not really. She nodded slowly, like she was deciding something. She said she had a weird request, and that I didn't have to say yes. She said she'd understand if I thought it was too much. I told her to just tell me. She asked if I would pretend to be her ex for a little while, just for the night. Not exactly him, but close enough. Same tone, same attitude. She said she wanted to see how it felt to say things she never got to say. Every alarm in my head went off at once, but I ignored them. I told myself it was harmless. A little strange, sure, but people process breakups in weird ways. I didn't want to be judgmental. I asked what that would even mean. She said she'd guide it, that I didn't have to improvise. She just wanted me to listen and respond honestly. I should have said no. Instead, I said okay, but only if we kept it light. She smiled. This time it reached her eyes. She started small. Asked me to sit differently. Asked me to look at my phone less. Told me that he used to slouch like I was slouching. I adjusted my posture without thinking. She asked me to apologize for being late all the time. I laughed and said I wasn't late tonight. She didn't laugh back. She said it didn't matter. She wanted to hear it anyway. I apologized. It felt awkward, but still manageable. Then she asked me to apologize for forgetting important dates. I hesitated and did it. I kept telling myself it was just words, no harm. Her face changed slightly after that. Not angry, focused. She told me how much it hurt when I ignored her messages, how stupid she felt waiting. She asked why I did that. I reminded her gently that I wasn't actually him. She nodded and said she knew. She said it still helped. I answered anyway. I said something vague about being busy, about not realizing how it came across. She leaned back and crossed her arms. She said that was exactly what he used to say. The air between us felt heavier. The bar noise faded into the background. I started to feel like I was sitting in the wrong seat, like I had wandered into something private. She asked me to say I was sorry for lying. I asked what I lied about. She told me I knew. I didn't, but I apologized anyway. That's when it stopped feeling like role play and started feeling like a trial. Every time I answered, she corrected me. Told me that wasn't how he said it. Told me my tone was wrong. Told me I sounded defensive. She asked me to repeat things until I said them the way she wanted. When I hesitated, she got quieter, colder. She told me this was why it never worked, that I always shut down when things got uncomfortable. I tried to pull back. Told her I thought this was getting intense. Suggested we drop it and talk about something else. She looked at me like I just confirmed something she already believed. She said I always ran when things got real. She asked me to stick closer. I didn't want to, but I did. She said he never stayed in his seat when she needed him. She said he made space when she wanted closeness. I felt trapped by my own politeness. Then the punishment started. She told me to put my phone on the table, screen down. She said he used to hide things. She wanted transparency. I did it. She told me not to look away when she talked. When my eyes drifted, she stopped speaking until I looked back. Then she continued slower, like she was teaching a lesson. She told me to keep my hands visible. Said he used to fidget when he was lying. My stomach was in knots. I felt stupid for staying, but I didn't want to escalate things by standing up suddenly. I kept thinking if I stayed calm, it would pass. She said sometimes she used to ignore him on purpose just to see how he reacted. She said it was only fair. She went quiet and stared at her drink, tabbing how long it took me to speak. I asked if she was okay. She said that wasn't what he would have asked. She said I should try again. I asked what she wanted to hear. She smiled slightly and said now I was learning. The server came by and asked if we wanted another round. I had never been so relieved to hear another voice. She shook her head and said we were fine. I didn't argue. She leaned in closer and told me about the night he left. How he packed while she was in the shower. How he didn't say goodbye. She asked me why I did that. I told her I couldn't answer for him. She told me to answer anyway. When I hesitated, she placed her hand on my wrist. Not gentle, not painful, just firm, grounding me to the table. She said this was what he used to do, hold back, pretend he didn't know why he hurt her. She let go and leaned back, watching my face like she was waiting for something to click. I realized then that nothing I said would be right. The goalposts kept moving. Every answer became another reason to be disappointed. She told me he deserved consequences. She said people don't change unless they feel it. She asked me if I thought I deserved to be punished for the things he did. That was it. I stood up so fast my chair scraped loud enough to turn heads. My heart was pounding. I told her I was done, that this wasn't okay. She looked genuinely confused, like she didn't understand why I was upset. She said she had been clear about what she wanted. She said I agreed. I grabbed my jacket and walked out without waiting for a response. The cool air outside hit me like relief. I didn't stop walking until I reached my car. I sat there shaking, replaying everything, trying to figure out when I lost control of the night. I blocked her before I even pulled out of the parking lot. I thought that would be the end. 2 days later, I got a message from a different profile. No photo, no name. Just a question asking if I was ready to try again and do it right this time. I didn't reply. I deleted the app. Sometimes I still think about how easily I stepped into someone else's guilt. How quickly I let myself be reshaped just to keep the peace. It scares me how natural it felt for her to assign blame to a stranger and call it healing. I don't roleplay anymore. I don't pretend to be anyone else. And if someone ever asked me to apologize for things I never did, I'd leave before they decide what I deserve next. I met him on a dating app. His profile wasn't flashy or over the top. He had a few pictures in a messy live and a casual smile that felt safe. The messages were easy, nothing forced. We agreed to meet for drinks on a Saturday evening. I got there first, chose a booth near the back where I could watch people coming in and out, and waited. I noticed in the moment he walked in. He had a calm presence, not flashy, nothing that screamed danger. Just normal. The bar was dim, low light, the kind that makes strangers feel like old friends. He joined me, and we talked about work, hobbies, and small stuff that normally makes a first date drag. It didn't. The conversation flowed without trying too hard. He laughed at the right moments, listened when I spoke. I remember thinking he was almost too perfect. After a while, he suggested we keep talking at his place. I hesitated for a fraction of a second, but shrugged it off. His apartment was nearby, in an older building with a faded brick exterior and a narrow staircase leading up. He unlocked the door and let me in. The first thing I noticed was how tidy everything was. Not sterile, but clean. There was art on the walls, books stacked neatly, small plants on the windowsill. It smelled faintly of coffee and something sweet. He offered me a drink, and I accepted. We sat on the couch. The conversation continued, easy like it had all night. After a while, I glanced around and noticed a closed door at the far end of the apartment. He caught me looking. I asked what was behind it. He said it was just a spare bedroom, nothing interesting, and changed the subject. I tried to drop it, but curiosity gnawed at me. Later, when I mentioned how cute his apartment was, he laughed lightly and said he liked privacy in certain spaces, hinted I'd understand eventually. Time passed. I was getting more comfortable, letting my guard down. Then I heard it. A cough, soft, hoarse, coming from the direction of the closed door. I froze. It was a sound that didn't belong to the normal quiet of the apartment. He noticed me stiffen, asked if I was okay. I nodded, pretending it was just the air conditioning or maybe me imagining things. But then it came again. A cough, stronger this time, followed by a low, wheezing inhale. My stomach dropped. I asked him what it was, trying to keep my voice casual. He said it was nothing, maybe a neighbor coughing through the walls. The thing is, the sound didn't echo like a neighbor's cough. It was close, inside, coming from the room he refused to open. I tried to laugh it off, saying maybe it was a ventilation thing, but the sound continued. I felt trapped between disbelief and panic. He suggested we watch something in the living room, handed me the remote, and insisted I focus on the movie. But every time I tried, the coughs came again, intermittent, deliberate. I couldn't ignore it. I realized then that he had been avoiding showing me that room for a reason. I asked again what it was, calmly this time, hoping he'd admit it was just some random explanation. He gave me a small smile, said it was personal, and asked if I trusted him. My stomach twisted. I didn't feel safe saying yes anymore. The rest of the evening became an exercise in trying to act normal while my mind raced. Every noise, every shadow in the room felt amplified. I noticed the way he moved when he got up from the couch, always careful not to pass the closed door. He laughed, offered me snacks, made jokes, but the coughs persisted. Finally, curiosity overpowered caution. I edged toward the door. I asked if I could see the room, suggested that maybe it would put my mind at ease. He tensed. His smile faltered. He said no, firmly. Then another cough, louder, closer, almost pleading. I stopped. My hand hovered over the doorknob. He said again that it wasn't something I needed to see, that it was private, and he looked almost worried. The word didn't fully capture it. His expression had an edge that hadn't been there before. I tried to focus on anything else, but my eyes kept drifting to that door. The coughing continued, irregular, as if testing my attention. I could feel my heartbeat in my throat. I realized then that he had been controlling everything in the apartment, every glance, every seat choice, every movement, making sure I didn't get too close to that room. After a few minutes of silence broken by another cough, I made an excuse to leave. He walked me to the door. I remember the way he held it open, smiled, said he hoped we could do this again soon. Outside, the night air hit me like relief. I didn't breathe fully until I was down the stairs. That night, I replayed everything in my head. The coughs, the closed door, the way he reacted when I mentioned it. Something was very wrong. I tried convincing myself that it was an animal in the apartment, a sick friend living secretly, maybe even a recording. Nothing felt right. I blocked him on the app the next day. I never went back. I never thought about messaging him. Sometimes I dragged past that building on the way home, and I looked up at the windows. I imagined what could be in that room. The coughing still echoes in my mind, soft and irregular, a sound I will never forget. There's a part of me that wants to know the truth. A bigger part of me is terrified of finding it. I don't know if anyone else will ever see that room. I don't know if anyone else would hear the coughs and feel the way I did. And honestly, I don't want to. The mystery is small, confined, terrifying, and I am grateful to have escaped without ever stepping over the threshold. The worst part is realizing how easily someone can seem normal, inviting, charming, and still hide something completely horrifying in plain sight. I matched with her on a dating app late one Friday night. Her profile was full of travel pictures and candid shots that somehow felt genuine, not staged. We messaged for a few hours before deciding to meet at a small rooftop bar downtown. It was one of those spots with string lights and a view of the city skyline that makes everything feel cinematic, even if it's just one date. I liked her instantly. She had this energy, a mix of charm and intensity that kept you on your toes. The date started normal. We talked about work, movies, favorite spots in the city. She laughed a lot, and I found myself leaning into her stories, imagining that maybe this could turn into more than just a one-off. After drinks, she suggested grabbing a bite at a 24-hour diner nearby. It was almost empty, the smell of grease and coffee filling the air. We talked more, joked around, and the conversation slowly turned personal without feeling forced. After midnight, we decided to walk back to her apartment, a few blocks away. The streets were quiet, just enough noise from passing cars to feel like the city was asleep but still alive. She invited me in for a nightcap. I hesitated slightly but agreed. Her lid was small but cozy, cluttered in that lived-in way that felt warm, like someone actually used the space instead of staging it. We had another drink, sat on the couch, and I noticed she had photo albums spread on the coffee table, most filled with pictures of her with friends and family. Nothing weird, just normal snapshots. We ended up staying up later than expected, laughing at small things, sharing stories from childhood, college, awkward jobs, and past crushes. She had a way of asking questions that made me reveal more than I normally would on a first night. When I finally left, it was around 3 a.m., and I felt like it had been a perfect, harmless night with someone interesting. Nothing in my mind screamed danger or alarm, just excitement and maybe a little curiosity about where things could go. I woke up late the next day, scrolling through my phone with a slight hangover and the afterglow of the previous night. That's when it hit me. Notifications, hundreds of them. Texts, social media tags, comments from friends I didn't know were connected, and endless congratulatory messages. I tapped on one of the links and nearly fell out of bed. There she was, smiling, wearing a white dress, standing next to me in a photo I had no memory of being taken. The caption read something like, "Engaged to my soulmate, couldn't be happier," and the comment section was exploding. Thousands of people congratulating me, tagging friends, sharing the post. I blinked, reread it, convinced it was some kind of glitch or dream. I checked my own social media. The pictures were real. She had posted engagement photos of us together. In one, I was clearly wearing the jacket I had worn last night, leaning against her with my arm around her waist. In another, a close-up of us holding hands with rings photoshopped on our fingers. There were backgrounds swapped in some, flowers edited in, but my face was unmistakable. I tried calling her. No answer. Texted. Nothing. I messaged on the dating app. Read receipts, but no reply. Panic set in, slowly creeping through my chest. I went through the post again, examining every detail, the angles, her expression, the way my jacket crumpled. None of it was from the diner or the rooftop bar. Some photos looked like they had been taken in a professional studio. The face was mine, perfectly placed. I got up and started pacing. The apartment around me felt suddenly claustrophobic. My friends started calling, sending screenshots of the post, asking if I knew. I kept saying yes, but every time I said it, I realized it wasn't true. I didn't agree to any of this. I hadn't even had the conversation about commitment. It was terrifyingly, overwhelmingly public. I checked her profile on the dating app again. Her pictures were gone, replaced with a generic avatar. Any mutual messages had disappeared. It was like she had never existed there. But the engagement post stayed, pinned, shared across social media, and every comment was like another person in on it, congratulating me for something I never consented to. I called my best friend over. He came immediately, looking confused and concerned. We went through the comments together. Some were people I knew, friends from college, coworkers, distant family. They were all asking questions, excitedly tagging me. I told him everything, how I remembered the night, how nothing had suggested she was going to do this. He nodded slowly, face pale, realizing how detailed and premeditated it must have been. I thought about reporting it. Social media support channels, police, maybe even the app. But then I noticed something worse. Some comments referenced things she shouldn't have known, little personal details from conversations that had never been public. She had stitched together the narrative of us in a way that made it seem real to the world, and she had done it overnight. The level of preparation was insane, meticulous, and completely disorienting. I spent hours trying to figure out if it was a prank, a glitch, or someone impersonating her. But the more I looked, the more real it became. The posts were everywhere. Screenshots of me laughing with her in the diner, the rooftop, edited to look like moments leading up to the engagement. The rings, the flowers, even a small album posted online showing moments labeled "Our Proposal," the first time he said he loved me, none of which had happened. My friends suggested deleting my accounts, locking down privacy, but the posts had been shared so widely that it didn't matter. Strangers were tagging me, congratulating me. People who knew me in passing were sending messages, asking about wedding plans, expecting answers I didn't have. The thought that someone could manipulate reality so thoroughly terrified me. It wasn't just identity theft. It was someone taking pieces of my life, blending them with their own vision, and broadcasting it as truth. Over the next few days, I couldn't escape it. The posts were everywhere. Screenshots in my inbox, reposts in forums, messages from people who believed I had agreed. It wasn't malicious in the sense of immediate physical danger, but it was invasive in a way I couldn't shake. Every notification made my heart race. I realized how little control I had over my image, over the stories someone else could tell about me. I never heard from her again. She vanished as suddenly as she appeared. All traces on the app, all social media contacts gone. It left me in this weird limbo, like a ghost story had played out using my face and my life as the set. I had to explain to people I knew that I wasn't engaged, that no proposal had happened, that nothing was real. But the posts continued to circulate. People were convinced. The illusion was more compelling than my own denials. Even now, months later, I avoid the spots we visited that night. I avoid the bar, the diner, even the route back to her apartment. I check my notifications cautiously, half expecting to see a new post with another staged moment. My friends still joke about it, but it doesn't feel like a joke. It feels like a warning, a reminder of how someone can manipulate moments, faces, and stories without permission, leaving the victim trapped in disbelief. The worst part is realizing how easily someone can fabricate your life and convince the world it's true before you even know it's happening. How quickly your reality can be hijacked, your face attached to events you never consented to, and knowing that once it's out there, no explanation will ever fully erase it. I matched with him on a dating app after weeks of messaging back and forth. His profile made him seem adventurous. Kayaking trips, mountain climbs, random photos of sunsets with perfect captions. But there was something in the way he wrote that made me feel like he was looking for someone impulsive, someone willing to drop everything and follow him into an unknown. I thought it was just the kind of person I liked, someone who could make a normal day feel like an adventure. We met on a Saturday morning at the edge of a state park. He was tall, athletic, wearing a backpack and hiking boots that looked like they belonged in a wilderness catalog. His energy was infectious. He suggested we do a trust exercise hike, and I, caught up in the thrill, agreed without asking too many questions. At first, it seemed innocent, like those guided trust walks you see in team building videos, where one person leads and the other follows with eyes closed. He promised it would be fun, a way to see how we work together. The first hour was normal. We walked through pine-scented paths, sunlight streaking through the trees, birds calling overhead. He had me close my eyes at points while he guided me past roots and rocks. My stomach fluttered with excitement and nerves, the way it does when you're falling for someone and a little scared. He kept reassuring me, making me laugh when I tripped slightly or hesitated. Everything felt like a game at first, a weird but harmless flirtation with danger. Then he started taking me down narrower paths, ones that didn't look like they were part of the official trail. At first, I thought he just wanted to explore hidden spots, which wasn't unusual for someone who talks so much about adventures. The forest started to thicken, the light dimming as the trees crowded closer together. I started noticing that we weren't passing any trail markers, which struck me as odd because the state park was usually dotted with small painted signs and ribbons on trees. When I asked him about it, he told me it was part of the exercise, that markers could be distracting and we needed to rely on trust and intuition. We walked for another hour, the path becoming almost a single line of dirt, branches scraping at our arms. I realized that my usual awareness of where we were had slipped completely. I wasn't thinking about time, directions, or distance, just following him because he seemed confident. He was calm, smiling, chatting about little things, asking questions about my favorite places, books I liked, nothing that seemed relevant to hiking, but somehow enough to distract me. It was when the sun had dipped low in the sky that I noticed something terrifying. The trail, the markers that should have been there, were gone. He wasn't just leading me off the beaten path. He had removed evidence of the trail. Every ribbon, every painted line, even some small cairns, all gone. Suddenly, what felt like a playful exercise turned sinister. I tried to tell myself it was part of the trust exercise, that maybe he just wanted me to focus completely on him, to rely on him for guidance. My heart started racing as the reality set in. I had no idea where we were. The forest, which had seemed cozy and picturesque, now felt endless, oppressive. Every tree looked the same. Shadows stretched long as the sun set. I couldn't remember if we were circling back or heading deeper into the woods. I began to feel a kind of fear that creeps up slowly, not a sudden jolt, but a pervasive, stomach-tightening realization that something was very wrong. He noticed my hesitation, but just smiled, reaching for my hand in what felt like a comforting gesture. The problem was, I didn't feel comforted. I felt trapped. He suggested we sit down and rest, and as we did, I noticed how meticulous he had been. Every trail marker that had been visible earlier was missing now. He must have removed them quietly while I was distracted. The thought made my stomach churn. The level of planning required to manipulate even a simple state park path terrifying. As darkness fell, he lit a small flashlight and suggested we keep moving. The beam cut through the dense undergrowth, illuminating trees that seemed to loom closer with each step. My phone, which I had been relying on for light and navigation, had almost no service. I tried to call for help once, but the signal dropped mid-dial. Every instinct in me screamed to leave, to run back the way we came, but he kept steering, his presence overwhelming the uncertainty of the path. I realized I had put my trust in someone who had engineered my vulnerability. He talked about relying on instinct and letting go of fear as we walked. His words were oddly soothing in tone, but deeply alarming in context. I started paying attention to his movements, the way he seemed to know exactly which direction to take without looking at anything beyond the forest itself. I realized he wasn't just hiking. He was orchestrating a situation where I had zero control, a controlled environment designed to test how far I would go blindly following him. Hours passed, or at least it felt that way. My sense of time was distorted by the dimming light and the uniformity of the trees. I began to notice subtle changes in the forest. Branches had been broken in unnatural ways, small obstacles that weren't part of a normal trail. He seemed to navigate around them effortlessly, leading me deeper. I felt panic bubbling beneath the surface, but outwardly I had to appear calm. Any hesitation, any attempt to take a different route, might provoke a reaction I couldn't predict. Eventually, we reached a clearing. It was small, surrounded by thick underbrush, with no sign of a trail leading out. He sat on a fallen log and gestured for me to sit. The sun was almost completely gone, leaving the clearing in near darkness. I realized fully then how thoroughly he had controlled our environment. Every path, every marker, every natural cue that would allow me to orient myself had been erased. I was entirely dependent on him to find my way back. My mind raced. I tried to reason with the situation, thinking of ways to escape, memorizing trees, small rock formations, anything that could give me a sense of direction. He watched me do this, smiling, calm as if everything were normal. It was terrifying to realize how comfortable he was with my growing fear, how this was exactly the point of his exercise. He suggested we stay in the clearing for a bit, to process the trust we built. I could see now that this wasn't about trust in any conventional sense. This was about control, manipulation, and testing limits. The forest, the missing trail markers, the isolation. It was all engineered to put me in a position where my choices were limited to what he allowed. I spent the night half sitting on a log, half standing, scanning the darkness, waiting for a sliver of light or a way back. He made small talk occasionally, asked about my favorite hikes, my childhood memories, keeping me distracted while the sky darkened fully. The stars eventually came out, and I could just barely make out shapes of trees and underbrush, but not enough to plan a route on my own. I realized that even if I tried to leave, I could easily get hopelessly lost. By morning, we found our way back to a marked trail. He acted as if nothing unusual had happened, casually pointing out where we grabbed breakfast. But the memory of that night, the hours spent in controlled fear, stayed with me. The forest was the same forest, but it was different now in my mind. No trail felt safe. Every hike, every wooded path, became a reminder of how easily someone could manipulate something familiar, turning it into a controlled nightmare. I never messaged him again. The dating app conversation vanished, and I couldn't even find his profile anymore. He had created an experience so complete that it felt like he could disappear entirely and no one would question it, but the fear lingered. Every time I enter a wooded area, I feel for trail markers first, signs of boundaries. The hike had been more than a first date adventure. It had been a carefully constructed exercise in fear, control, and observation, and I was left thinking about how little protection you have when someone else decides to erase the rules. I matched with her on a dating app late one Friday night, mostly out of boredom, scrolling through faces that didn't spark much interest. Her profile stood out because she seemed normal but intriguing, messy hair, a smirk like she knew something I didn't, photos of her at bookstores and coffee shops. Something about the way she wrote her bio made me think she was self-aware in a way I liked. We started talking, small things at first, joking about mundane stuff, trading recommendations for shows and snacks, nothing heavy. I figured it would be a casual hang, maybe dinner somewhere crowded so neither of us would feel stuck. Our first date was in a downtown cafe with low lighting and wooden tables, the kind where you could hide in a corner without feeling obvious. She arrived looking a little more put together than in her photos, but in a way that suggested effort rather than trying too hard. She ordered coffee and sat across from me, smiling as if she already knew the joke I was about to make. Everything felt easy, casual, like one of those first dates where you're cautiously interested but not invested yet. The second date was more intentional. She suggested a walk along the riverfront at night. It was cold but clear, the lights reflecting off the water. I remember thinking how comfortable it felt to be around her, the kind of comfort that doesn't warn you it might turn dangerous. She asked questions about my past relationships, at first surface level, and I answered honestly, thinking it was normal small talk. Looking back, those questions weren't innocent curiosity, they were preparation, feeding into a script she had already written in her head. By the third date, the pattern was clear, but I was still blind to the danger. She invited me to her apartment for dinner. She cooked a simple meal, and we drank cheap wine she swore was better than it tasted. The apartment was neat but strangely minimal, as if every item had a purpose in her plan. Conversation was light, but quickly shifted toward hypothetical situations. Arguments, breakups, apologies. She asked what I would do if someone I cared about betrayed me, and I answered cautiously, feeling slightly uncomfortable. She didn't react to the answers. She just nodded, listening in a way that made me feel observed rather than heard. The real horror started subtly. She began asking about my reactions to specific breakup scenarios, almost casual questions at first. If I had been dumped via text, would I retaliate? Or would I feel if someone deliberately embarrassed me in public? I laughed nervously, brushing it off as morbid curiosity. She pressed further, giving detailed examples that mirrored my own past relationships without knowing I had experienced them. At first, it felt like coincidence. Then I noticed how precise her questions were, how closely they matched events I'd never mentioned to anyone. As the night went on, she started introducing elements from her exercise. She asked me to replay certain moments with her, minor arguments, misunderstandings, mistakes I had never made, framing them as if I had. She encouraged me to respond the way I thought I might in the past, and I realized slowly that she had memorized my reactions in advance. It was subtle at first, a comment here, a correction there, making me doubt whether I was remembering things correctly or following her imagined narrative. I should have left then, but curiosity and confusion kept me seated. She smiled when I hesitated, pushing just enough to keep me involved. She began describing scenarios in which she had been wronged by exes, asking me to play the role of the ex. My heart started pounding, though I tried to keep my reactions measured. The scenarios were impossibly detailed, almost cinematic. She seemed to have rehearsed every line, every gesture, every response. It got worse. She started staging small punishments for the fictional mistakes I supposedly made. She spilled wine on my shirt to simulate rage over a betrayal. She rearranged items on the table to mimic chaos. She made me apologize for things I had never done, scripting my reactions as if she was directing a scene. The air in the apartment felt heavier with every step, every movement, as if the walls themselves were part of her performance. I realized too late that the entire interaction had been designed to let her act out revenge fantasies she had been holding on to for years. I wasn't dating her. I was a prop, a living actor in a scenario she had envisioned and rehearsed meticulously. The sophistication of it, how she managed to lure me in, get me comfortable, make me participate without realizing it, was frightening. I felt manipulated, violated, and trapped in a nightmare I couldn't opt out of without seeming rude or unstable. She didn't raise her voice, she didn't shout, she didn't hit. She didn't have to. Her calm, meticulous control made everything worse. She had me following cues, playing parts, performing remorse and confusion, and all the while I thought I was engaging in normal dating. She had structured it so carefully that I doubted my own memory, my sense of what had actually happened. Every glance, every touch, every casual question had been weaponized. Hours passed. She kept escalating scenarios, each more precise and emotionally charged than the last. She made me confront supposed past mistakes, face imaginary betrayals, apologize, and plead for forgiveness for events I had never been part of. The combination of psychological manipulation and physical mimicry left me exhausted, tense, and disoriented. By the end of the night, I realized she had constructed a full narrative in her mind, and I had been acting inside it, unknowingly giving life to her long-held fantasies. I eventually excused myself under the pretense of needing to leave, my pulse racing. As I walked back to the street, the apartment door closing behind me, I felt the full weight of what had just occurred. It wasn't just that she had acted strangely. She had planned an entire evening around recreating a breakup scenario, forcing me to inhabit the role of someone from her past she had been rehearsing for years. The thought that this could be repeated with anyone she matched with, that I could have been any one of her carefully selected victims, made my skin crawl. I deleted the dating app the next morning. I changed routines, avoided places downtown for weeks. Even now, months later, I think about how easily someone could manufacture intimacy and trust, then twist it into a mechanism of control. I replayed parts of the evening in my head, trying to separate reality from her narrative, trying to understand if any of my reactions had been mine or just performances she had guided. The scariest part is realizing that she had known exactly how to get me to participate, exactly how to direct my behavior without me noticing. She had mapped my personality, my tendencies, my reactions, and she had designed her plan to exploit them. The level of premeditation and obsession required is what makes it truly disturbing. She wasn't just unpredictable. She was calculated, methodical, and terrifyingly patient. I told a few friends the story, but it's hard to convey the psychological complexity, the slow build of dread, the creeping realization that you're not living in a shared moment, but in someone else's personal script. It wasn't dramatic in the usual sense. No violence, no shouting. Just control, manipulation, and a precision that made it impossible to argue or escape without seeming paranoid. I don't think I'll ever trust the casual first dates that feel too easy, that move too quickly. The memory of her, of the night she orchestrated an entire past against me, lingers in every new match, every casual dinner invitation, every message that seems slightly too interested. It's a reminder of how someone can manufacture fear and compliance without ever raising their voice. How carefully someone can design a world in which you unknowingly play the part they want. I met him on one of those apps that makes it way too easy to pretend your life is perfect. His profile was boring at first glance. Just a guy with messy hair and a shy smile. But there was something in his pictures that made me pause. Like maybe he had a story I wanted to know. We started texting, nothing crazy, just small talk about coffee and weekend plans. He didn't overwhelm me, which was nice. Most guys go full throttle on the first night, but he was patient, funny in a quiet way, and oddly good at remembering tiny details I'd mentioned. I started thinking maybe this was normal dating again, the kind where you can actually relax. Our first real hangout wasn't fancy. We grabbed tacos from a truck by the river and walked around the boardwalk. He told me about his job at some tech company downtown, but it felt more like he was letting me peek into his head than bragging about it. I liked that. He had this calm energy, the kind that makes you forget your phone exists. By the end of the night, he asked if I wanted to come back to his place for a drink. It wasn't weird, not at all. It felt normal. I said yes because why not, right? His place was small, cluttered in a way that made it feel like someone actually lived there. Not staged, not like those apartment listings that look like magazines. He had plants all over the windowsill, old records stacked next to a turntable, and this weird stack of books with the corners bent like they'd been read a lot. He put on music and made some whiskey drinks that were stronger than I expected. We talked, laughed, and the night stretched longer than it should have. He seemed nervous in a subtle way, like he was holding back a laugh or a story, and that made me lean in more. Then he asked if I wanted to meet some of his friends. I thought, okay, casual, meet his friends, normal, maybe a couple people from work or old college buddies. I didn't think anything of it when he said it would be at his friend's loft, somewhere downtown. The elevator ride up felt longer than it should have, and the lights flickered for a second when we got off. I shrugged it off. When the door opened, I stepped in and felt my stomach drop. There were 5 people sitting on mismatched couches and chairs, all looking at me in the same weird way. Not like the usual polite staring strangers give you, more like they'd been waiting for me to show up, and now they could finally look. I got the introductions and tried to act casual, but the more he talked, the more I realized something was off. These weren't friends. They didn't know him in any normal sense. Each of them started telling stories, not directly to me, but in this odd circle chatter, and I noticed that every story included some version of when I was with a girl or this one girl I went out with. My chest started tightening when I realized they were all telling the same kind of stories, but I didn't recognize any of the names he mentioned. Then one of them, a woman with dyed green hair, laughed and said something like, "Remember how she didn't even notice?" And my stomach flipped because she was looking right at me. I tried to stay calm, thinking maybe I was overreacting. Maybe it was a weird coincidence. But then he started introducing them as his inner circle, which sounded fine until he explained that they were all girls he dated before. And when he said dated, he didn't mean one or two dates. He meant every one of them had been in that place of trust and closeness with him, just like I was now. And there I was, sitting in the middle of this room, realizing that somehow, I was the next one. They weren't just talking about past relationships casually, they were dissecting them. Little comments, jokes, subtle digs about things that sounded exactly like something I had said during our first date. I started noticing patterns. The way he moved around the room, the way he made eye contact, it was rehearsed, like he had been running this scenario in his head 1,000 times before I even walked in. And the people around me, they weren't just listening, they were cataloging, taking mental notes, laughing at things I didn't find funny. He called it bonding, but it felt more like an initiation into something that I couldn't yet understand. I wanted to leave, but the moment seemed frozen. There's that weird thing that happens when your brain is screaming to go, but your body is stuck. He offered me a drink. I said no, he didn't push, just watched me with that quiet, measuring expression. Then the stories got worse. They started sharing names, exact details, dates, even what everyone wore on certain nights. The coincidences were horrifying. One guy leaned back and laughed about a girl who hated sushi but pretended she liked it because he liked it. I froze because that was me. One of the women described a conversation about some random movie I had mentioned. Every single person around the room had something about me, all woven together with my own memories, like they had known me for months. But they hadn't. Not yet. And that was when I realized he had to have been tracking me, studying me, preparing these people for me without me even knowing. I tried to act casual, tried to laugh along, tried to convince myself that maybe this was some bizarre social experiment or performance art. But it didn't feel like art. The room smelled faintly like stale cigarettes and old carpet, but that smell was comforting to them, not me. They were comfortable here, and I was just a guest they had all been anticipating. He introduced a new game, saying we should share stories, like we always do in our inner circle. I felt a cold pit in my stomach because the first story was about me, something I had mentioned only once. He framed it as a joke, but everyone laughed, and their laughter cut through me. I wanted out, but when I stood up, I realized the exit wasn't simple. The loft had a narrow hallway and a locked side door that led to some storage area. He noticed me standing, and there was a flicker of amusement in his eyes. That wasn't friendly amusement. That was satisfaction. They didn't stop talking, didn't pause. They just kept weaving together these memories, these moments that were mine alone, but now were being used like threads in some twisted tapestry. I felt like I was underwater, struggling for air, but needing to stay because if I left abruptly, I would be the one to cause a scene, to draw attention. He offered to show me some photos on his phone, saying they were funny snapshots from past hangouts. I hesitated, knowing I probably shouldn't, but curiosity killed me. The photos weren't funny. They were snapshots of moments from my dates with him, some of which I hadn't even realized he'd been paying attention to. Each picture had me smiling or looking down, completely unaware. He had all of it documented like a living archive. And the people around him, the inner circle, they looked at me with this quiet intensity, like I was the main exhibit in some ongoing project they all participated in. I left that night with a pounding head and shaking hands, barely able to speak. He walked me to the street, casually holding my hand like nothing had happened, saying we'd hang out again soon. I didn't argue. I didn't say a word. I just nodded, trying to make it to the cab I called. Every step away from that building felt like healing myself from a nightmare, but I knew it wasn't over. The inner circle wasn't just a group of people. It was a system, a network, and I had just been folded into it without realizing it. Even now, I keep thinking about the loft, the way their eyes followed me, The way he smiled like he owned a version of me no one else had ever seen. It wasn't about control exactly, it was about documentation, about creating a web of people all tied together in some secret archive. And I wonder how many others had come before me, how many had smiled and laughed like I did before realizing too late that they were just one more chapter in the inner circle. I don't want to think about it too much, but the memory keeps showing up in small ways. Someone commenting on a detail I never thought mattered. A stranger laughing at the exact wrong moment. He doesn't even have to be there for it to feel like him, like the inner circle is still circling, waiting. I haven't been on another app since. I delete messages, I ignore calls. I make excuses if someone wants to hang out. I don't trust the quiet ones anymore, the ones who wait and watch. There's a part of me that knows it's not just him, that it's the pattern, the way the inner circle could exist anywhere. Anyone could be running it without me knowing. And sometimes I think about the loft, about the room full of strangers smiling and sharing stories that aren't theirs, and I can feel that same weight in crowded spaces, in caves and buses. I don't talk about it, not to friends, not to anyone. It feels like admitting it would make it real again, like saying it out loud would give them more power. So I just carried it quietly, a warning to myself that the world can be stranger and more invasive than any story you tell yourself. And the memory of him, that quiet, patient, measuring smile, follows me more than I'd like to admit. I met her on this dating app that I mostly use when I'm bored, just swiping while waiting in line at the grocery store or on the train. Her pictures were weirdly dark, but they were taken in candlelight or some old apartment, and I don't know why, but I liked it. Not because I'm into goth stuff or anything. It just made her stand out from the usual selfies with coffee cups. She seemed confident too, like she knew exactly how she wanted to be seen online, and that pulled me in. We matched, started talking, and it wasn't awkward. She asked about my weekend plans and somehow suggested dinner. I said yes, thinking it would just be another casual thing. The restaurant she picked was strange, the kind of place tucked behind a street of shops, neon barely lighting the sign outside. It looked like it hadn't changed in decades, with low ceilings and red velvet booths that smelled faintly of old grease. I thought maybe it was one of those hidden gems you find on Yelp, the ones people obsess over for their atmosphere. I arrived first and got a booth near the back, trying to act casual, checking my phone while pretending not to notice the odd silence. The waitstaff moved quietly around the tables, not busy exactly, but watching everything like they were waiting for someone. When she came in, she smiled in a way that felt like she already knew the night would go her way. We ordered food, small talk at first, then the conversation got a little more personal, the kind where you think maybe you're actually clicking. But there was something subtle that didn't sit right. Every time I tried to check my phone or glance at the exit, her eyes would follow me, and I felt this strange weight, like she wasn't just paying attention to me, she was measuring me. That should have been the first warning. The food arrived, and I noticed she didn't start eating. Not even a bite. She just sat there, smiling faintly, staring at me, and saying that the night wasn't over yet. I laughed it off at first, thinking she was joking, but then she leaned forward and mentioned something about needing to finish the ritual. I thought maybe she meant some weird birthday tradition or a personal thing she does at dinner. I laughed nervously, tried to steer the conversation somewhere normal, but she kept repeating it, a little firmer each time, until I realized she wasn't joking. I tried to leave the booth just to walk outside and get some fresh air, but the waitstaff suddenly appeared. One guy blocked the aisle with this fake smile, another moved the chair across from her, and the hostess said she could get me a different table, but it would take a long time. I asked again if I could just leave, thinking this was all some kind of weird game, but her eyes went hard, and she said, not harshly, not angrily, just firmly, that the ritual wasn't finished. That phrase kept looping in my head. Ritual. And the way everyone around us seemed to shift slightly to make it harder to get out. Like there was a choreography happening without anyone talking. I looked around the restaurant and noticed subtle things I hadn't before. The lighting felt almost staged, every candle on the table flickering in sync with the music. Other diners weren't really eating either. A couple in the corner picked at their plates slowly, never speaking, eyes occasionally darting toward our booth. The staff was quiet, polite, but every movement felt calculated, like they were actors in a scene where I was the main character. I felt my chest tighten as I realized that leaving wasn't just discouraged, it was actively being blocked. I tried pretending to be casual, checking my watch, pretending to scroll on my phone, but she leaned across the table, subtly adjusting her napkin, and mentioned the steps, the sequence, the importance of waiting until the ritual was complete. My stomach dropped. This wasn't a joke or a game. I didn't understand what it meant, but I felt trapped. I noticed her phone on the table, open to some notes or a checklist app with bullet points and dates. I didn't look closely, didn't want to know too much, but even from across the table, I could tell the steps all mentioned me, our conversation, our drinks, the food. I started scanning the exit signs, trying to find any way out without drawing too much attention, but every glance was met with someone from the staff moving into my line of sight. It was subtle, nothing dramatic, just enough to make me hesitate. I realized this had been planned, all of it. The restaurant wasn't normal, the staff wasn't normal, and she wasn't normal. I started thinking about how easily she must have researched me, planned this night to make sure I couldn't leave until she was done. It was like a trap dressed as dinner, and I had fallen right in. Hours passed. Not literally hours, but long enough that I couldn't tell anymore. The food had been taken away, plates replaced, and yet no one seemed in a hurry. Every time I tried to signal a server for the check, someone appeared before I could make eye contact. Every time I shifted in my seat, she subtly moved to block me, smiling, calm, patient. The calmness was the worst part. I kept expecting her to get impatient or angry, but she didn't. She just waited, measured, like this was all exactly what she wanted. I realized the ritual involved sitting there, letting her control the pace, responding to questions she hadn't asked yet, laughing at jokes I didn't fully understand, reacting to things I couldn't predict. Every response was being cataloged. Every glance I gave, every small movement, she noticed. And the staff was watching too, as if taking notes or recording data. I kept looking at the other tables, trying to find anyone not complicit, but everyone else seemed distant or frozen, part of the scene, extras in her pride of performance. At one point, she had me repeat a toast, not for the food or the drink, but for her, for the ritual. The way she said it made it feel like some ancient practice, like if I messed up, it would ruin everything. My hand shook slightly as I lifted the glass, and she smiled faintly, satisfied. The staff didn't blink, didn't react, but I could feel their silent approval. It was surreal, like living in a movie where everyone except the protagonist knows the rules, and you're just trying to improvise without failing. I started to panic quietly, thinking about calling someone, texting a friend, anything. But my phone kept dying, battery low, and the signal was weak. I couldn't figure out if the restaurant itself was blocking it or if it was coincidence, but the result was the same. I was isolated, sitting at a table that had become a stage for something I couldn't name. The ritual wasn't about me getting dinner, it was about her controlling the environment, and the staff's behavior confirmed it. They weren't just serving, they were enforcing silent participants in a plan I couldn't see fully yet. Eventually, I realized arguing or trying to force my way out wouldn't work. Every move was countered with subtle pressure, polite words, minor obstacles that prevented me from stepping out. The ritual wasn't verbalized fully. It didn't need to be. My compliance was enough, my hesitation noted, my actions catalogued. I spent the rest of the night trying to appear relaxed, laughing at the right moments, answering questions as if I understood the rules, but inside, I was counting every minute until she said it was done. By the time she finally said the words, that the ritual was complete, I was exhausted, my mind racing with disbelief and fear. I didn't even think about walking out at first. I just sat there stunned, trying to process how smoothly it had been orchestrated. The staff moved around us normally now, casual, friendly again, like nothing had happened. The light seemed brighter, the music louder, and I realized I could leave without anyone stopping me, but the disorientation lingered. I walked outside slowly, trying to process the night. The street looked normal, cars passing, people walking by, nothing that would hint at what had just happened. I kept looking back, half expecting someone to follow, half expecting her to appear behind me, smiling, waiting for the next step of some never-ending sequence. I called a cab and didn't stop talking to the driver until I got home, not because I had a story to tell, but because I needed the sound of someone else's voice, anything familiar. Even now, thinking about it makes my stomach turn. I avoid that part of town, that kind of restaurant, even casual dinner apps. I keep thinking about her, about the way she orchestrated the night, about how the staff wasn't just staff. They were part of it, part of a system I don't understand. There's no lesson, no moral, just the memory of being trapped in a place that looked normal, surrounded by people who weren't. The ritual was real, and I was its audience, unwillingly participating until it ended. His profile was kind of bland at first glance. A few selfies in a park, some vague references to hiking and coffee. Nothing that screamed danger, nothing that screamed interesting either, but for some reason I swiped right. The first conversation was casual. Nothing intense, just memes, some back and forth about weekend plans. He didn't push for phone numbers immediately, didn't overdo it with compliments or questions, and that calm, slow approach made me relax. I told myself maybe this would be a normal date, a night that wasn't embarrassing, awkward, or insane. We picked a coffee shop downtown that I had never been to, tucked away in a corner between a bookstore and a thrift shop. The streets around it were quiet, the kind of neighborhood where the neon signs blink half-heartedly and the foot traffic is mostly tourists and students. When I walked in, he was already at a table in the back, one of those tiny wooden tables with chairs that squeak if you lean back too far. He waved, and I smiled, sliding into the chair across from him. The first few minutes were like any other date, awkward laughter, commenting on the music playing softly overhead, swapping stories about college and jobs. Then I noticed something odd. Every time I said something, he would tilt slightly, glance at his phone for a split second, then look back at me. At first, I thought maybe he was checking messages, but it didn't feel right. There was this precision to it, like he was recording my voice without being obvious. I brushed it off, assuming I was being paranoid. But then, during a lull in the conversation, he asked me to repeat a story I had told him 5 minutes ago. I laughed nervously, thinking he had just forgotten, but he smiled like it was important that I said it exactly the same way. I started paying closer attention and realized that he had a small device tucked on the side of his phone, barely noticeable, with a tiny red light blinking. My stomach dropped slowly, the kind of slow realization that creeps up on you. He wasn't just listening, he was actively recording me. And not just for the usual bragging about a date or some weird keepsake. Something about the way he looked at me, measuring, timing every word, made me feel like it wasn't just audio, it was data. Like my personality, my voice, my laugh, everything I said was being captured to be replayed somewhere else. The date continued, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was performing, that every sentence I said was being logged and analyzed. I tried to act normal, tried to make conversation, but the subtle fear clung to me. Every topic I brought up, every joke, every little personal anecdote, I imagined being dissected, stored, trained into something that wasn't real. I tried to glance at his device again, but he kept it perfectly hidden now, almost like he could sense I had noticed. That was worse than catching him at first. It confirmed intent. We left the coffee shop, and I noticed his route was deliberate. We didn't take the street back toward the train station or the bus line I had initially mentioned. Instead, he walked toward a quieter area, a part of the city I didn't recognize, past a row of empty shops and shuttered cafes. My gut told me to say something, to turn around and head back, but I kept following because I couldn't make my voice sound normal anymore. The silence between us was thick, and I realized the entire date had been constructed not to connect, but to capture. Every laugh, every sigh, every little reaction I made had been a lesson for whatever he was building. Finally, he led me into a small apartment above a closed vintage store. The interior was meticulously clean, sterile almost, with shelves lined with electronics and boxes labeled in tiny handwriting. I tried to step back, think of a way out, but he gently closed the door behind us. That's when I noticed the microphones hidden in corners, the camera lenses tucked among books, the wiring running neatly along the edges of the ceiling. It wasn't just a date anymore. It was a lab. A lab built entirely for me, my personality, my words, my life distilled into digital form. I started looking around, panicking quietly. The devices weren't hidden with the intent to scare. They were hidden to be invisible. There were folders open on the laptop, each one filled with my voice captured from the app, from the date, from who knows how many previous interactions I never noticed. And the AI program on the screen was mimicking me, answering questions in the same tone I had used minutes earlier, in ways that were frighteningly accurate. My exact cadence, the way I laughed at jokes, even the slight pauses I took when thinking, all recorded, all replicated. I tried to act casual, pretending I was just checking my phone, nodding at things he said, but every glance I stole at the screen made my stomach twist. I realized he had probably trained the AI incrementally, starting from text messages, voice notes, maybe even public videos or social media clips. The coffee shop, the walk, this apartment, it was all just another step in refining the AI version of me. And the scariest part was that it didn't feel personal in a creepy way. It felt clinical, systematic, like I was a model being scanned for data points. Hours passed, though I couldn't tell exactly how long. I watched the AI respond to questions that hadn't been asked yet, my own voice saying things I had never intended to say aloud. It felt like watching a mirror that wasn't really reflecting me, but a simulation that could predict how I would behave. He watched silently, taking notes, occasionally typing something into the program, adjusting algorithms that I didn't understand. The world outside didn't exist. The city streets didn't matter, my friends, my life. They were irrelevant. All that mattered was this digital version of me that he was slowly perfecting. I tried to reason with him, at least in my head, thinking maybe I could convince him this was wrong, that he couldn't do this, but it felt futile. He didn't argue, didn't try to defend himself, didn't even blink in a human way. It was like he had already anticipated every objection, every plea, every reaction I might have. And in that silence, I realized I wasn't being treated as a person anymore. I was just data, a personality being harvested to exist in a program that could say anything I would say, mimic anything I would mimic, and eventually replace my presence entirely. Eventually, I forced myself to leave, stepping out onto the street and pretending like nothing had happened. My legs were shaking, my hands cold, and every step I took felt like it should be loud enough for someone to hear the chaos in my mind. But when I looked back at the apartment building, it was dark, silent, completely normal. The kind of place no one would suspect anything. I felt exposed in every way, knowing he could continue capturing me online, continuing the AI project with or without me. I couldn't change it. I couldn't erase the recordings or the program he had already trained. I was left with the knowledge that somewhere out there, a version of me existed that could talk, laugh, and live exactly as I would without my consent. Even now, I notice small things differently. I wonder if the conversations I have online are being captured, analyzed, or replicated. I avoid voice notes, careful about the words I choose, paranoid in a way that makes normal texting feel safe by comparison. Every notification on my phone makes me think of the AI he created, the apartment, the quiet way he logged my every detail. There's no resolution, no justice, just the lingering understanding that someone has made a version of me that exists entirely separate from me, responding to prompts I didn't give, living out my personality in digital form without permission. I don't meet people online anymore, at least not without suspicion. I delete messages immediately, avoid apps that store voice or video, question every person I meet. And sometimes, late at night, I imagine him opening the program, running tests, asking the AI questions that I would have answered in a particular way. It doesn't hurt physically, doesn't leave marks, but it is a deep, quiet violation that can't be undone. The AI version of me is alive somewhere, waiting, talking, listening, and I can't stop it. She was insane. I met her on one of those dating apps where everyone seems like they're auditioning for some version of their life they don't actually live. Her profile said she was between homes, traveling light, looking for conversation, coffee, someone who could listen. I didn't think much of it at first, just shrugged and swiped right. Something about the way her pictures looked, messy hair, oversized jackets, city streets behind her, felt real. Not polished, not fake, just like she existed in a slightly messy version of life, and I thought maybe that was interesting. Our first conversation was casual, just small talk, laughing at the stupid gifs we sent each other, nothing heavy. I liked that. No pressure, no overthinking. When she suggested we meet at a diner on the edge of the city, I agreed. It wasn't fancy, neon lights flickering, greasy booths. the kind of place that smelled like frying oil and coffee but felt alive. I got there early, sat at a booth near the window, trying to look casual while scrolling through my phone. She walked in later, backpack slung over one shoulder, looking tired but not miserable. We exchanged smiles. She slid into the booth across from me, and the first few minutes were like any other date. Awkward laughter, conversation about work, movies, a couple of bad jokes. She was funny, easy to talk to, and I relaxed. After a while, she mentioned again that she was between homes, which I thought was fine, normal even. I imagined she had friends she stayed with, or maybe short-term rentals. Nothing that would make me suspicious. I didn't think much of it. We finished our meal, paid, and I suggested we go for a walk around the block to grab some fresh air. The streets were quiet, late afternoon sunlight reflecting off the pavement, and I remember thinking how ordinary everything felt, how normal this could be. The first sign that something was off didn't hit me immediately. It was little things, like the way she seemed to know exactly what was in my car, even though I had never mentioned it. She asked where I parked like she had been there before, like she knew my schedule. I laughed it off, saying I just found a spot nearby, but she didn't respond like it was a joke. She just nodded and smiled, this faint, knowing smile that I didn't understand. We ended up back in my car after wandering for a bit, and that's when I realized something was wrong. I opened the door to grab my bag and felt something odd on the floorboard. A small blanket folded neatly, tucked behind the passenger seat. I'd assumed maybe someone had left it there before me, a passenger or a friend, and didn't think much of it. But then I noticed the smell, a faint mix of perfume, body wash, and something else I couldn't place. My stomach tightened slightly. We got in the car, and as we drove to a park nearby, she casually mentioned she'd been around here a lot, that she liked the neighborhood, that it felt familiar. I joked about her being a local, and she laughed, saying something about always finding her way to the right spot. That was when it hit me, slowly at first, like a cold realization creeping up my spine. She knew my car, she knew my route, she seemed comfortable in my space in a way that didn't make sense. When we parked, she didn't get out immediately. Instead, she started organizing the passenger seat, adjusting the blanket, putting a small pillow on it. My heart started beating faster, but I told myself to calm down. Maybe she was just tired. Maybe she was joking. Maybe I was reading too much into it. But the more she arranged things, the more it felt deliberate, like she had been doing it before I'd even noticed. And then I remembered the scent. It wasn't just perfume, it was her. She had been here in my car before I even met her. I tried to act casual, said we could walk a bit, and she agreed, but she didn't move as if she wanted to leave. She kept adjusting the blanket, the seat, making sure everything was in order. That's when I noticed her backpack was full, strangely heavy, and when she shifted it slightly, I caught a glimpse of clothes, toiletries, small personal items. My stomach dropped. I realized she had been living in my car, maybe for days, maybe for a week. The pieces clicked together slowly, the way she knew exactly where everything was, the comfort in my space, the blanket and pillow already ready. I tried to leave, thinking maybe I could get her to explain, to pack up and go, but she didn't respond in a way that made sense. She just smiled faintly, like nothing was unusual. I checked the back seat and saw more signs. Small items tucked into corners, a water bottle I didn't recognize, a notebook with her handwriting, scribbled in a way that suggested it had been used for some time. I felt my chest tighten. My car, my private space, had been invaded without me realizing it. I had been driving her around, letting her sit in my car, all while she treated it like home. The realization hit fully as I drove, trying to figure out how to handle it. She wasn't aggressive, not in a scary way, but the calmness was terrifying. She wasn't embarrassed. She wasn't apologetic. She just existed in my space as if she belonged. I couldn't understand how I hadn't noticed sooner how she had orchestrated this without me realizing. Every step of our time together had been carefully measured, casual enough to seem normal, calculated enough to make me unaware of the truth. I thought about calling someone, maybe the police or a friend, but she was there, silent, unbothered, watching, organized. I realized arguing might escalate things, and she wasn't unstable in a way I could predict. She was precise, patient, and aware of every reaction I had. I parked at the edge of the park and tried to reason with her, tried to gesture toward the door, but she just adjusted the blanket, smiled faintly, and leaned back. The message was clear. She wasn't leaving until she decided. Hours passed, or maybe it was minutes. It's hard to tell in that surreal state where I was half panicking, half paralyzed by disbelief. She had transformed my car into a home without permission, and I had unknowingly facilitated it. I kept scanning the streets, thinking maybe I could drive somewhere safe, somewhere she couldn't follow, but she always subtly shifted to keep the space around her under control. I felt trapped, not by force, but by the calm certainty in her demeanor, by the fact that she had been there first, that she had claimed my space before I even realized it. Finally, I parked in a friend's apartment complex, hoping to create some distance. I made up a story in my head about why she was there, tried to rationalize it, but the facts didn't change. She had been living in my car, taking over my routine, my parking spots, my space, and I hadn't noticed until I chose to meet her. It wasn't about fear anymore. It was about the invasion, the calculated patience, the way she had inserted herself into my life without confrontation or alarm. I felt hollow, exhausted, and completely outmaneuvered. Even now, thinking about it, I notice small things differently. My car doesn't feel like my own. I check for signs, look for belongings that aren't mine, hesitate before meeting anyone new. I delete messages, avoid casual plans, and when I drive alone, I can't shake the feeling that she could be anywhere, waiting, patient, organized. There's no confrontation, no shouting, no obvious threat, just the fact that someone had treated my car like home for a week while I was completely oblivious. The memory is quiet, invasive, and unrelenting. It's a subtle, living reminder that space and safety can be taken without warning, with precision, and without anyone realizing it until it's too late. I matched with him on a dating app late one night when I was scrolling because I couldn't sleep. His profile wasn't anything special, just a few pictures at concerts and parks, a couple of vague lines about loving coffee and being spontaneous. Normally, I wouldn't even think twice, but there was something offbeat in his smile, not charming in a traditional way, just different enough that I swiped right. Our messages started casual, jokes about work and how tired we both were from the week, the usual small talk. He suggested grabbing a drink at a bar that was supposed to be trendy but quiet. I said yes, thinking it would be a normal, chill night, nothing heavy. I got there first and scoped out a table in the corner, the kind where you can see the whole room but no one can really see you. The bar smelled faintly of old wood, alcohol, and smoke from the kitchen. There were a few scattered groups, mostly talking low, the lighting warm and dim. When he arrived, he waved, and I waved back, trying to look casual. He slid into the seat across from me, and at first everything felt normal, small talk, laughter at dumb jokes, exchanging stories about our weekends. He had a way of listening that made me relax, like he was paying attention in a way most people pretend to online. Then his phone started buzzing. At first, I didn't think much of it. People's phones always go off. But the tone was strange, almost mechanical, constant notifications that made me glance over. I didn't want to seem nosy, so I kept drinking my water and talking. But the buzzing continued, and I started to notice patterns. The messages were random. They all seemed to be from different people, all thanking him for last night. The first time I saw it, I laughed quietly, thinking it was a joke, some app notification glitch. But as the messages kept coming, dozens of them piling up, I realized the words were the same every time. Thanks for last night. I had a great time. Some were from numbers I didn't recognize, some from people with only first names, but none of them were real. I had never met these people. They weren't part of any story he had told me. My stomach dropped. I tried to ignore it, thinking maybe he was texting friends. Maybe it was something else. The buzzing didn't stop. Every time I shifted in my seat, another message popped up. I tried to glance at the phone without staring too obviously, and that's when it got weird. The notifications weren't just generic. They mentioned small details I had told him in the last hour. One message even referenced a story about my job that I had just told him, phrased as if I had been there the night before. My heart started racing. I considered saying something, but my voice caught in my throat. It wasn't like confronting him would make sense. The bar around us felt different suddenly, quieter, like everyone else was invisible. I realized I couldn't tell if this was real, a prank, or something I didn't understand. His eyes flicked toward the buzzing phone, then back at me, calm, patient, like nothing was unusual. That made it worse. If he noticed and wasn't panicking, then maybe I was seeing this wrong. Maybe it wasn't accidental. Maybe this was part of how he operated. The next messages were more personal, referencing what I had laughed at, what I had said quietly, what I had absent-mindedly commented about the drinks. The tone was all wrong, casual, intimate, knowing, and it hit me that this wasn't a joke. Someone or something was recreating interactions I had just had, messages that didn't exist, people who had never met me. I wanted to run, get out of the bar, but my legs felt frozen. My mind raced through possibilities, through explanations, none of which made sense. He didn't act differently at all. He sipped his drink, smiled faintly, adjusted his jacket, like he was unaware of the chaos his phone was creating. I tried to focus on him, tried to ground myself, but the notifications kept coming, piling up faster, referencing details I had only shared that night. The calmness in him made it worse, made it feel like he was in control, like the world around us had shifted so subtly that I hadn't noticed until I was already trapped in it. I excused myself to go to the bathroom, hoping to clear my head, hoping to figure out what was happening. When I looked at the messages more closely on his phone while he wasn't paying attention, I noticed patterns. Each number repeated slightly altered names, the text sequencing like chapters in a story, building on moments I had only just shared. The date, the bar, even the jokes. Everything was being replicated, like he had access to a system that tracked my actions and represented them to fake versions of people who didn't exist. I felt sick, my stomach twisting, my hands shaking. I went back to the table and tried to act normal, but my mind kept replaying the notifications. Every new buzz was another reminder that whatever this was, it wasn't random. It was organized. I noticed other things about him, small gestures I had ignored before. The way he checked his phone when I laughed, the way he typed something quickly and glanced up, the way he seemed calm, almost bored, as if this happened every time. I started to realize he wasn't just matching with people. He was generating these interactions deliberately, using my life, my words, my presence to feed something I didn't understand. The bar started to feel like a different place, the walls closer, the music louder than it should have been. Every time I turned my head, I expected to see someone standing there, someone from the messages waiting for me. The buzzing intensified, dozens of notifications, and I couldn't make sense of how this was possible. Every interaction I had, everything I said, was being used to create these fake responses. I didn't know who was behind it, what the goal was, or if it was even human. The uncertainty was worse than the fear itself. I tried to leave, to get out of the bar, but my body was tense. He got up to get another drink, and I had a moment to glance at the phone. More messages, more names, all thanking him for last night, referencing inside jokes we hadn't had yet, recalling things I had just said in a private, casual way. I felt violated, exposed, like someone had mirrored my life without permission. I realized this wasn't about him personally. It was about the replication, about the way my presence was being used to build something I couldn't touch, control, or erase. Eventually, I had to leave, walk out into the night, the buzz of my own phone feeling meaningless compared to what I had seen. I kept thinking about the messages, about the fact that someone out there or some system had tracked, replicated it, and thanked me for interactions I hadn't even had before they happened. The memory of it is like a constant echo, a quiet hum that lingers in my mind every time I meet someone new, every time my phone buzzes. Even now, I avoid dating apps. I check notifications obsessively. I hesitate before sharing anything personal. I question whether every interaction is real or just another echo being generated by something I can't see. The bar, the drinks, the laughter, it all feels like a simulation that someone else can replay at will. There's no confrontation, no resolution, just the ongoing knowledge that my words, my presence, my life can be mirrored back at me in a way that feels intimate, private, and deeply wrong. The buzzing never really stops, at least in my head, and I can't unsee the messages thanking me for last night with people I never met. She didn't have selfies or polished pictures, just candid shots in odd places on a train platform, a library, a laundromat, streets with weird angles. Something about it caught my eye, and I swiped right. Our conversation started slow, casual, joking about the weirdness of dating apps, and the boredom of scrolling endlessly. She suggested coffee at a place that was tucked into a side street, nowhere crowded, the kind of spot with creaky chairs and weird mismatched mugs. I liked the idea, thinking at least it wouldn't be another loud, crowded bar where you can't hear each other. I got there early and grabbed a table near a window, watching people walk past, thinking about how normal everything seemed. She arrived about 10 minutes later, backpack slung over one shoulder, hair messy in a way that made her look alive instead of styled. At first, everything felt normal, small talk about jobs, favorite movies, the weather, dumb stories from the week. I noticed she was paying attention to details, remembering small things I had said in messages, and it felt flattering. That's when I didn't realize the slow creep of what would eventually terrify me had already started. Over the next couple of weeks, we kept meeting. She came over sometimes, we cooked small meals, went out for coffee, wandered around the city. Everything seemed casual, normal, nothing alarming. But I started noticing little things. First, my favorite hoodie didn't feel right. I could tell immediately when I put it on, it fit differently. The fabric felt off, the color slightly wrong. I laughed it off, thinking maybe I had washed it and shrunk it or faded it. Then I noticed the watch I always wore, a simple black leather strap, wasn't quite the same. The face was slightly different, the numbers thinner, the second hand moved a little slower. I tried to ignore it, but it kept happening. A t-shirt here, a pair of jeans there, small changes that at first seemed inconsequential but piled up. One day, I realized my phone wasn't mine. The model was right, the wallpaper was mine, all my apps were there, all my messages and photos. But when I looked closely, some settings were different. Some default apps were rearranged, battery life seemed off. My wallet was the final thing. I pulled out my ID to show someone, and the font on my name looked subtly different. My credit cards, everything was slightly off. It didn't click at first. I tried rationalizing it, blaming stress, tiredness, maybe some kind of coincidence. But the more I checked, the more impossible it became to ignore. The clothes weren't just replaced, they were replicated, almost identical, almost perfect, but slightly wrong. I started testing myself, keeping items in my apartment, marking tags, leaving my phone on a table with the screen facing up. The next time I checked, the items had been swapped with new versions. Not exactly mine, but almost. She never seemed like she was doing anything strange. We went out, ran errands. Sometimes she stayed over, sometimes she didn't. She never touched my things noticeably. I started noticing patterns in the replacements. New items appeared after she had been over, or when I returned from errands, or even sometimes when I woke up alone. I felt my anxiety rising, my sense of safety in my own space collapsing. I would open a drawer and find duplicates of socks I had been wearing the night before, pants that looked identical but fit slightly off. I went through my closet one day, counting, comparing tags, textures, and realized half of my clothing had been replaced without my knowledge. Then I noticed it wasn't just the clothing. My phone, my wallet, small personal items. Everything was being swapped. Not stolen, not missing, but replaced with versions that were wrong. My headphones, my favorite notebook, even the coffee mug I drank from every morning. Everything was gradually being taken over. I felt insane at first, like maybe I was overreacting. But the details didn't lie. My ID, the bank cards, everything looked like mine, worked like mine, but not quite. I tried to confront her subtly, asking about things, testing if she would react, but she never did. Nothing changed. She kept visiting, calm, casual, making jokes, asking about my day. Nothing about her demeanor hinted at awareness of what she was doing. I started checking locks, doors, windows obsessively. I even changed my routine, tried to leave items in places she wouldn't touch, but when I returned, the duplicates had appeared anyway. My own apartment felt like a museum where the exhibits were slowly being replaced by versions curated by someone else. It got worse when I realized that she didn't just replace things in my apartment. My work bag, my gym bag, items I carried around, even things I left briefly at coffee shops, sometimes came back subtly altered. The world started to feel smaller, more controlled, as if someone was redrawing boundaries I didn't consent to. I couldn't leave my space without wondering if everything I touched would return slightly wrong, slightly altered, a mirror that didn't reflect reality correctly. I started documenting everything, taking photos of my clothes, my wallet, my phone, all my items. Comparing images over time showed the slow, deliberate replacements. It wasn't immediate. It was patient, calculated, precise. Each swap almost imperceptible, like a sculptor working inch by inch, slowly transforming what was mine into what someone else decided it should be. I felt like I was losing my life in tiny increments, pieces I didn't even notice being replaced until the pattern became undeniable. One night, I tried locking everything in my bedroom, keeping my phone in my backpack, my wallet in a drawer. She stayed over, and I watched every movement, trying to catch her. But she never touched anything overtly. I went to sleep exhausted, my mind racing, paranoid alert. When I woke up, everything was subtly swapped. A different blanket on the bed, the hoodie I had been wearing the night before replaced, phone on the nightstand with a slightly different case, battery level off, screen brightness lower. My wallet was in the same spot, but the font on my name, the embossing, was off. My ID still worked, my credit card still functioned, but nothing felt mine anymore. I realized finally that it wasn't about theft or conventional harm. She was reconstructing my life, piece by piece, from the inside out, and I had no control. My environment, my belongings, my personal identity through the items I carried were being subtly rewritten. I started sleeping in shifts, keeping items in my car, marking them with tape, taking photos before I went out. It didn't stop the replacements. The duplicates appeared anyway. I felt powerless, trapped in a reality that was no longer mine, but carefully curated by someone else. The last straw was when I pulled out my wallet and noticed a new card I didn't recognize, tucked neatly behind the old ones. The ID looked exactly like mine, my face, my name, everything, but something was off in the shading, the lines, the texture. It was like I was looking at myself through a filter that someone else controlled. I realized then that my possessions, my routines, my sense of ownership over anything had been hijacked silently, invisibly, without confrontation, without acknowledgement. She wasn't violent. She wasn't chaotic. She was methodical, patient, precise. I don't even know how to describe the aftermath. I stopped trusting the world around me, stopped leaving things unattended, started questioning if I even knew my own things anymore. Every item I owned became suspect, every object a potential replacement, every reflection in a mirror slightly untrustworthy. My apartment felt like a slowly morphing environment controlled by someone else's vision, and there was no obvious way to reclaim it. She visited, smiled, laughed, brought coffee, hugged me, and everything seemed normal. But every time she left, the subtle replacements resumed like clockwork. My life had been taken, not stolen, but reassembled without my permission, piece by piece, day by day, in the most patient, unnoticeable way possible. I matched with him on a Saturday afternoon when I was killing time between classes. His profile wasn't anything special, just a couple of travel photos and a quote about loving quiet nights, but something in the way he wrote made me keep swiping. Our messages started casual, talking about favorite caves, movies we liked, and the fact that neither of us had plans that weekend. He suggested dinner at a small restaurant he claimed had the best risotto in the city. I said yes, mostly because it sounded normal and low pressure. When I got there, the place was smaller than I expected, tucked between two storefronts that looked abandoned from the outside. Inside, it was cozy, warm lighting and strange little framed photos on the walls, people I didn't recognize, scenes I couldn't place. He was already there, sitting at a corner table with a faint smile, looking like he'd been waiting forever. At first, everything felt normal. He ordered confidently, joked lightly about the wait times, and I laughed, thinking maybe this would be just another casual dinner. As the night went on, I noticed things that didn't make sense. He knew details about the city I had never told anyone, little shortcuts between streets, obscure shops I had only discovered recently. It felt weird, but I chalked it up to coincidence, or maybe he was just well traveled. I tried to ignore the creeping unease, sipping my wine, glancing around the restaurant, the other tables occupied but distant. Somewhere during the main course, I decided to Google him. I had been curious, wanted to see if he had a presence online, social media, anything to make sense of the uncanny familiarity with my world. I pulled out my phone under the table, typing his full name, expecting at least a few posts, maybe a LinkedIn, maybe some pictures, but nothing appeared. At first, I thought I misspelled it, so I typed it again. Nothing. Then I typed it a third time, slowly, carefully, making sure I wasn't leaving out a middle initial. Still nothing. That's when I noticed the strangest thing. As I scrolled through the search results, the links disappeared in real time. I could see them, a list of entries, a photo here, a news article there. Then as my finger swiped down, they'd blinked out, replaced by blank space or a vague, no results found message. I froze. My pulse spiked. I tried again, typing his name in quotes, using different search engines, even attempting different spellings. Every time, results would appear briefly and vanish as soon as I tried to scroll, as if the more I looked, the more the internet itself was erasing him. I tried opening tabs in private mode, clearing caches, nothing worked. It was like my searching was a threat to him and the world itself was responding by removing him completely. I looked up from my phone and tried to act casual, pretending I was checking messages. He was watching me, not in an obvious way, just calm, neutral, almost expectant. The smile didn't change, but something in his eyes hinted that he knew exactly what I was doing. I put my phone down, pretending to sip my drink, trying to convince myself that I was imagining it. But the feeling wouldn't leave. It was too specific, too precise. By the time dessert arrived, I had to check again. This time I typed his name along with the city, the neighborhood, anything I could think of. Tiny search results popped up for a fraction of a second and vanished before I could even tap. Some were photos, some were short news blurbs, small mentions that could have been anything and then gone. I tried to screenshot it, but the moment I touched the screen, the images blinked out again, leaving only empty white space. I started to feel trapped, like the restaurant itself had shifted in significance. The lighting, the faint hum of conversation, even the smell of the kitchen seemed sharper, more deliberate, as if it had been arranged for this exact moment. He continued talking calmly, ordering coffee, chatting about nothing, and I could barely follow him. My brain was occupied with the impossible reality that this man's existence online was literally being erased in real time. I thought about leaving. The restaurant felt suddenly confining, like the walls had moved closer, the exit smaller. I considered standing up, saying I had to go, but every instinct I had screamed that moving would make things worse. I tried to think rationally, telling myself maybe it was a network glitch, a hacking thing, a coincidence, but nothing explained the synchronized disappearance of search results the second I interacted with him. I put my phone down again, watching him. He sipped his coffee, looked out the window, relaxed, as if he had been waiting for this to happen hundreds of times before. I tried to study him, notice something, anything, a flaw, a tell, a clue to explain the impossible phenomenon. But everything about him was precise, deliberate, untraceable. His hands moved naturally, gestures simple, his smile calm. No hesitation, no slip. After a while, I started testing it differently. I opened different browsers, devices, even asked a random person in the restaurant to check if they could search him. On my phone, results blinked out instantly. On theirs, nothing appeared at all. He had no digital footprint outside of the few moments I tried to verify him, and even then, those moments were fleeting, disappearing faster than I could interact with them. The rest of dinner passed like a nightmare framed as normalcy. We ate, we drank, he talked about hobbies, places he had visited, friends he had known. Every time he mentioned a detail, I checked subtly, trying to confirm anything online, anything that could root him in reality. Every time it vanished, or didn't exist, or blinked out as if erased by some unseen force. I couldn't tell if he was lying or if the universe itself was responding to my doubt. I left the restaurant feeling hollow, like my sense of reality had been rewritten without my permission. The walk home was tense, every streetlight sharp, every passerby distant. I tried to search him for my apartment later, using my laptop, my tablet, even my roommate's devices. Same result. No history, no posts, nothing tangible. I tried to find any pattern, anything I could remember about him, but the vanishing search results made me second guess everything I thought I knew about that night. The fear isn't about him following me or doing something violent. It's about erasure, about reality bending quietly in ways I can't control. He exists when he wants to in a private bubble of perception, but outside of that, the world doesn't acknowledge him. My brain keeps replaying the dinner, the slight tilt of his head, the calm precision of his movements, the way my phone betrayed me with disappearing links. Every time I think about it, my stomach tightens, my mind spins with questions I know I will never answer. I don't use dating apps anymore. I don't Google strangers. I avoid small restaurants tucked into corners where everything seems normal but might not be. I keep my phone face down, I leave it alone. Try not to test the limits of the world in front of me. The disappearance of evidence, the quiet erasure of someone's existence in real time, left a mark I can't ignore. It's not fear in the traditional sense. It's more like a vacuum, a constant hum of uncertainty, and every time I close my eyes, I see that calm, deliberate smile from across the table, knowing everything I try to verify will vanish before I can understand it. The thing is, the world continues, people continue to exist, but he doesn't leave a trace outside of memory, and memory is fragile. I don't know if anyone would believe me if I told them. I don't know if I even believe in myself anymore. All I know is that evening, that restaurant, the fading search results, changed the way I interact with the world. It's not that I'm scared of him physically. It's that he proved reality itself can be rewritten quietly, deliberately, while I sat inches away, pretending everything was normal, pretending I was fine, while the world erased him in real time.